the meeting.
So do you think we should wait a minute? Have we gotten any communication from them or no? Okay, well, okay, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. Welcome to the Thursday, May 12th, 2012 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission for the City of Albany. Can we have a roll call?
Certainly. Commissioner Abbott?
I am here.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Here.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Kent is absent. Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Price?
Commissioner Price also called in that she'd be absent.
Okay. And Chair Beal?
I'm present. So we do have a quorum. This particular commission has a special rule that it has to be 4, regardless of the number, but we do have a full commission. So we have a quorum. I'll go ahead and get started. The first item on any agenda after the roll call is the land acknowledgement. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. The following land acknowledgement statement shall be read at the beginning of each City Council meeting and advisory per Albany City Council minute action, November 15, 2021. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their homes. The second item on the agenda is approval of minutes for April 14, 2022. Does anyone want to have discussion on the minutes, or do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'm happy to put forth a motion that we approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes. Commissioner
Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal?
Yes, and the motion carries. And thank you for joining us. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is for persons desiring to address the advisory body on item that is not on the agenda. Please note that each speaker is limited to up to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take in or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda item. And on that note, what I wanted to mention, our agenda tonight has 2 items. One is the update on the Eucalyptus Project on Albany Hill, and the other is street tree applications. So you cannot talk about those 2 items during this period. Okay, so now I've been told that there actually is a way to see the participants. And I'm wondering, do we have anybody out there? Is anyone waiting? I don't see anyone.
No one has their hand up at this. There's a hand.
Oh, Bob's Cipher. Okay.
Okay.
I see now. I'm learning. Can we let him in? Hi, Bob. I'm not hearing you yet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Hi, guys.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how to make you see me because I don't appear to be showing on the.
You don't get that.
Okay, good. All right. Fair enough.
Fortunately.
Fair enough.
We do hear you though, so go ahead and speak.
I'm just here tonight on behalf of many of the neighbors. I've been asked to represent the neighborhood on Santa Fe Avenue. There's a couple of trees close to the corner of Santa
I'm
Fe.
sorry, Bob. Bob,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's on the. Is this a street tree removal or is it different trees?
It's a street tree removal.
It's on the agenda.
I don't know. I haven't seen the agenda.
Okay, what is the address of the tree?
841 Santa Fe.
That's on the agenda. You'll have to wait until that item is up under item 6 to comment.
Okay.
If you have anything else you want to talk about, you're welcome to use the rest of your minutes.
No, I can wait until.
Okay, sorry about, government procedures and stuff.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Do we have anyone else that wants to speak?
Not at this time.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that there's enthusiasm about tonight's agenda. So we'll look forward to hearing from you when item 6 comes up. Then if there's no more public comment, the next item would be staff and commissioner announcements, reports and updates of status of previous agenda items. I think usually we usually go to the staff first. Do you have anything, Isabel, or anyone else?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay to go. Okay. Our department just completed the first ever community expo, where we had over 40 community groups and city departments showcase their programs and services to the community. There was live entertainment, there was food, and something for all ages. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their participation. Excuse me. It was great to see the community back in person. Now we're revamping our preparation for the start of our summer programming, which includes camps, classes, and events. Registrations are going well and programs are filling fast. However, if anyone is still interested in signing up, it's not too late. You can register or get information by visiting the city's website or calling the Recreation and Community Services Department at 510-524-9283. Our next event will be a July 4th concert at Memorial Park. More details on that event will be announced in the next few weeks. Lastly, I'd like to plug next weekend's FOAS Pancake Breakfast. So the FOAS stands for Friends of Albany Seniors, and they would be quite disappointed if I didn't mention this annual event. It's scheduled for Saturday, May 21st at the Albany Community Center from 9 o'clock till 12. It hasn't happened in the past couple of years due to COVID. So I know that they're excited to host everyone, and they're partnering with the Albany Fire Department to serve up some pancakes with all of the fixins. If you're interested, you can contact the Senior Center for tickets and details. And that concludes my announcements. Thank you.
Is that, before Brian goes, is that all the announcements from staff, or do the other staff members have announcements? Okay, Brian Martin.
Yeah, sure. I just got unmuted. Thank you. I wanted to bring people's attention to a planning and zoning meeting that happened yesterday and a decision that was made there. So Commissioner Frank and I were on the call on the meeting and spoke, and it was interesting to see that the Caltrans land, kind of under the freeway across the street from the new park and ride, a private business had applied to Caltrans for using that space for their own business, which ends up being a private dog walking facility that they bring dogs to for their customers. Customers don't actually go there. The public can't actually go there, but they, so that was a space that we've been considering for a number of different things, and had been talking about either a dog park being there or a bike park or a pickleball court. All kinds of ideas had been thrown out. And staff had told us that it was very hard to work with Caltrans, and there were other issues with the space and things like that. And so now what the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the comments from the public and from the Parks and Rec commissioners who were in attendance, and put a limit on the business, a time limit. So they said 5 years for the business to serve its, I think it's a few dozen households that they serve in that space that they're going to fence off for dogs, for the dogs they serve, that they take care of. And so so we won't be able to consider anything for the next 5 years. But it does interestingly enough, does seem to be that getting Caltrans approval for at least some types of projects there's a green light there. So that's just some news from another commission that impacts some of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you for your words and for staying on top of things, Brian. And I just want to point out we can't discuss that item. He reported it, but we can't talk in detail. But I know some of you probably want to, but we could have a subsequent meeting about this topic. Pros Commissioner Abbott.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to quickly mention that thanks to the Berkeley and Albany City Councils, that we will have a 2022 Solano Stroll. So that news has come down. So we'll be back as more or less usual. We won't be having mechanical rides, and there'll be some differences. We're still kind of trying to figure out whether we're going to have a parade or not, but we will have a Solano Stroll on September 11th. 2022. So we're very excited about that. Thank you.
Did you say September 11th?
It's September. It's always the second Sunday, and this year it's September 11th.
For some reason, I thought it was 30. There's something else at the end of September.
Well, there is Dinner with Albany is usually later in September.
That's what it is.
And it is an even number year. I don't think they've probably thought about that yet, but that's a possibility.
Any other commissioners have announcements? And I just want to mention the other event that we talked about, the yard sales, the citywide yard sales. I went around and took advantage of that, and there can report there were some really good deals. So if those people out there that are bargain hunters, pay attention this time next year. So on that note, we'll move on to the update on the Eucalyptus Project on Albany Hill and Natural Maintenance with Margot Cunningham. And do we have a staff report?
We sure do. Good evening. I'm Margot Cunningham, Natural Areas Coordinator. And I will share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see this? All right. So tonight I'm gonna talk about what's been going on Albany Hill and in the creeks around Albany. A lot's been happening. So here's our agenda. I'll talk about where we are with our Eucalyptus project on the hill, what's going on with the studies and funding. And then I'll get into what kind of vegetation management and other activities have been happening on Albany Hill and the various creeks. All right, so we'll start off with Albany Hill. And this is what I'm going to go over and update you guys on the different studies. We've got 3 different studies and then funding and grants. Okay, so the first one, higher level tree assessment. So at the October 18th, 2021 City Council meeting, we gave the results from our first arborist, SBCA tree consultants, and they had recommended a handful of immediate removals, which we did in September. And then they recommended removal of most all other eucalyptus that they looked at on city land. But they did say that some eucalyptus where the Monarch's cluster could be saved if they were cleared by a higher level tree assessment. So we had another arborist, McNeil Arboriculture Consultants, come and evaluate 37 trees in and near Monarch clustering areas. And their report, you should have seen it in the agenda packet. So they use something called a resistograph, which is a drill that measures wood hardness and then converts that measurement to a graph that they can use to infer decay and cavities. And you'll see some of those graphs in their report. It's their opinion that the risk of whole tree failure for the trees that they inspected in the monarch habitat areas is low within 5 years. But they concurred with SPCA's conclusion to remove these trees because many are declining in poor health, have poor structure, and others are more likely to fail as they become more exposed by removing surrounding trees. But this 5-year time span does give us some time to plan removals. There was one tree that they needed to do. The resistograph was inconclusive on what was going on with it. And this is a tree, it's a large tree on the west side of the Crest Fire Road and it's south of the cross. So they used another instrument called a tomograph, which sends sonic signals that they place on the trunk, and it maps areas of decay, hollows, and cracks. And then they can estimate the loss of strength across the planes being imaged. And these images are in that report as well. They found that this tree could actually be saved because it has good taper. It has a good amount of branches and leaves. The mass of the tree is concentrated low to the ground. The tomograph found some decay, but they determined that the sound portions are large and capable of supporting the tree. Okay, so the next study, our monarch habitat assessment. Creekside Science is doing this, and they're doing an assessment in all of the open spaces on the hill, including the private open spaces. In February, they had a subcontractor fly a drone to get Lidar scans of all of the trees and shrubs to see what areas and vegetation structure provide best conditions for monarchs. Lidar stands for light detection and ranging. So it uses light in the form of a pulsed laser to measure distances to the Earth. So you can get precise 3D mapping of features. And here's an example of what they obtained in these scans. It shows, I don't know if you can see this, but it shows precise areas of tree canopies, all these little things in here. These are all the tree canopies and shrub canopies. The colors indicate elevation. So the more blue ones are down near the base of the hill. And then as you get up to the red, that's the crest. And this also shows key windbreak areas for the monarch cluster areas on the west slope. And you'll see this triangular shape here. I mean, not triangular, rectangular. The trees and shrubs in there, they provide ground to upper canopy wind shelter, which Creekside Science says is essential for monarchs using the lower cluster sites. Okay, now this is a map showing wind exposure. And this is wind exposure from all directions, north, east, south, west. And it's wind exposure at the outer canopy. So the red areas are high wind exposure, and the blue areas are low wind exposure. And something to note here, the blue areas that you see on the left side here, below where the cluster sites are, those are the areas behind the big condos on Pierce Street. So those are providing some wind shelter. Okay, so the scans also reveal something about live healthy leaves. And there's an indicator called NDVI, which stands for Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. And it's a formula that uses the amount of visible light and infrared light reflected from the vegetation to indicate live healthy leaves. So you'll notice up at the top where the oaks are, it's a darker color. Those are high values, whereas lower down in the scan, where the drought and pathogen stressed eucalyptus are, we've got lower values. So lower values of live healthy leaves there. So Stu Weiss, the monarch biologist at Creekside Science, he met with Carol Rice and Cheryl Miller, who are the wildland fire consultants doing the fuel load assessment for us. And they compared notes on what areas and vegetation structure is critical for clustering monarchs, how different fuel treatments might affect the monarchs, and then how fuel treatments can be modified to optimize reducing fire hazards while protecting monarch habitat. So next steps for the monarch habitat assessment, Stu Weiss plans to take more hemispherical photos to further investigate the fine scale wind exposure of the cluster sites. And a hemispherical photo, that's when he takes a camera and he puts it on a gimbal and it takes a picture straight up into the sky. So he goes to different areas on the hill and uses this camera to get this picture of showing the canopies straight up from the ground to see what kind of wind exposure is happening in different sites. Okay, so our fire fuel load assessment. As I mentioned, our wildland fire consultants are Carol Rice and Cheryl Miller, and they've gathered data on canopy heights, the presence of ladder fuels, canopy cover, and surface fuel types. They've done fire behavior mapping and an analysis, including flame lengths, rate of spread, and fire line intensity. And they'll be using all of this data as well as information from their meeting with Stu Weiss to come up with recommendations for vegetation treatments. Okay, so funding. On October 18th, 2021, the City Council authorized appropriation of funds for a capital improvement project to fund the higher level tree safety assessment, a tree removal and habitat restoration plan, along with CEQA, and then some funding for contingency. And we're going to need a lot more funding. So in addition to the CIP, on May 2nd, the City Council authorized staff to submit a grant application to the Coastal Conservancy Wildfire Resilience Program. And the purpose of the Coastal Conservancy Wildfire Resilience Program is to restore natural areas while reducing fire risks, which is what we want to do on Albany Hill. So in addition to coming up with a plan for tree removals and habitat restoration, we also want to keep the hill fire safe in the short term. So in the grant, we are including asking for funding to extend Urban Tilth's contract an additional year. And I'll be talking later about the work that Urban Tilth has been doing, so you'll understand more what that means. And we're also asking for funding to start a habitat restoration intern program where we want to encourage hiring young people from historically marginalized communities to document plant and animal communities on the Hill, which will help in our development of a more fire resilient and healthy ecosystems. Priorities of the grant program are to fund projects that provide significant benefits to the community, especially for people in communities that have been historically underserved. So we're hoping this grant application is due this coming Monday. And we're hopeful that we'll get it. So before moving on to other topics about general vegetation management in our natural areas, I just wanted to give one additional update related to the eucalyptus, our Eucalyptus Project. Earlier this week, a contingent of city staff, including our city manager, met with staff from the East Bay Regional Parks District Fuel Reduction Unit. So the East Bay Parks Fire Chief was there, along with other East Bay Parks fire staff and their folks working on vegetation management. They showed us work they've done and are doing at 5 different sites in Tilden, Sibley, and Redwood Regional Parks. And they're dealing with large areas of tree mortality, way bigger than what we're dealing with here, as well as many miles of wildland urban interface. They offered advice on permitting, collaborating with other agencies and stakeholders, working around sensitive species, working on contracts and with contractors, as well as sharing their documents to help us with our planning. So we'll be following up with them and staying in contact throughout our project on Albany Hill. All right. So on to the day-to-day vegetation management on Albany Hill, which is guided by our Albany Hill Creekside Master Plan. And it has 3 goals: fire prevention, ecosystem health, and access and safety. So fire prevention, it's making sure fire roads are clear for fire vehicle access, bringing down the accumulation of downed wood, mainly from eucalyptus. Ecosystem health, there's several native plant communities on Albany Hill that support a lot of wildlife, including birds and pollinators. So we want to keep those native ecosystems intact and improve degraded habitats. And then access and safety, we want to keep trails and roads clear of debris and overhanging branches and make the area feel open and safe. So this is the map that's in the Albany Hill plan. And the colored areas are city-owned property. And all those little EOJT, EGHT, those are the names of vegetation units that are based on the major types of plants growing in them. And E stands for eucalyptus. So you see most of them have some kind of eucalyptus component to them. So Albany Hill is an ecologically unique place for such a small area. It has a diversity of habitats, as well as a diversity of plants and animals. And one reason for this is that it's situated directly across from the Golden Gate. So it gets cool marine air. And the hill is also on the East Bay shoreline. So it does have also a warmer inland influence. And these conditions allow for a variety of plants to grow, which in turn creates a variety of habitats, which then attract a variety of wildlife. There's about 130 native plant species on the hill. Over 100 birds have been sighted, and over 150 butterflies, moths, and bees have been seen on the hill. There's also all kinds of frogs, salamanders, lizards, snakes, and mule deer. Mule deer actually, they live and breed on the hill. And these are photos showing the different kinds of habitats, from meadows on the east side of the hill and in a few other areas. There's oak woodland on the north and east side. Riparian, we've got Cerrito Creek and Middle Creek. And then, of course, a lot of eucalyptus. And then scrub, which is a mix of different kinds of shrubs, such as toyon, but there's also a lot of poison oak. Okay, this is one page from the detailed action plan in the Albany Hill plan. So each vegetation unit has a set of tasks for what to do, how often, and we've been using this as our guide for work on the hill. Much of the work that we do, it involves removing invasive plants. So here's a definition for you and a picture of one of the invasive plants, French broom. So there are about as many invasive plants or non-native plants as there are native plants on the hill, and many are invasive. So we have our hands full. Invasive plants create fire hazards, they compete with native plants, and they degrade habitat for wildlife. When we do this work, we're not able to remove every single individual plant, but we can put dents in their populations. And this is especially true with French broom, because French broom produces hundreds, if not thousands, of seeds that can stay alive for 40 years. So you have to keep coming back year after year and pulling their sprouts. So a lot of these invasive plants, they got started in the horticultural or landscape trade and then escaped from people's gardens. So that's a big problem. The eucalyptus, they were planted as a buffer by dynamite companies on the west side of the hills in the late 1800s. Okay, I mentioned Urban Tilth. They are a nonprofit based in Richmond, and they teach local residents about the relationships between natural ecosystems, food, health, and justice. And they have a watershed stewardship crew that hires young people to steward and restore ecosystems in and near their communities. So we entered into a 3-year contract with them to do work on Albany Hill and our creeks. And they've been working 1 year so far. So here's some things that they have done. So planting on Albany Hill. So before we hired Urban Tilth, we had a contractor in the winter of 2020 install about 500 Albany Hill source native plants on compacted areas of the crest, as well as in other areas where trail improvement work was done in 2019. So that's what you'll see in the upper photo there. All those are little bunch grasses up on the crest. And then in this past winter, Urban Tilth planted about 200 natives along the slope above Jackson Street on the east side of the hill. And these were mainly native bunch grasses that have really long roots that help stabilize the slope. But they also planted flowering plants that are good for wildlife, including our monarchs. Fire safety mowing. So every 1 to 2 weeks, Urban Tilth is mowing up on the hill between spring and fall, and they're targeting annual grasses and thistles before their seeds dry out. So we're hoping to eventually reduce the crop of those weeds over the years. Other work that's been happening on Albany Hill in the fall of 2020, Urban Tilth installed 40 additional steps on the Oak Woodland Trail. And we have a new fire hydrant at the Taft Turnaround, East Bay Mud, installed. So the fire department is very happy about that. It increases their capacity to fight fires anywhere on the hill. We have met a couple of times with members of the Confederated Villages of Lishan. The second time we met Deja Gould, who is Karina Gould's daughter. So we met Deja and her daughter. They met, actually, the Urban Tilth crew on the hill to see the work that Urban Tilth has been doing. And we also visited the grinding rocks, and Deja started to think about what activities her tribe may want to do on the hill, such as plant gathering. And Isabel was there as well. We plan to meet again next month. Okay, Cerrito Creek. So at the Parks, Rec, and Open Space meeting on January 14th of 2021, we told you about 2 large non-native trees that we wanted to take out along the creek, Canary Island palm and a blackwood acacia. And this work was done in March 2021. And you can see that the tree company, they used a crane to remove both of those large trees, so they didn't disturb any of the plantings that were there. So Urban Tilth, they've been continuing to do their work along this stretch of Cerrito Creek, which is from San Pablo Avenue west to Adams Street. And surprise, in October 2021, we saw this large fish trying to swim up Cerrito Creek, but it couldn't make it past San Pablo Avenue. It was stuck right at just below the culvert. And the urban tilth crew leader identified it as a Chinook salmon, which is actually a threatened species. And this guy was large, like I think about 2 feet long. It's hard to tell in this picture, but it was big. So here, this is a picture of the urban tilth crew leader on the far right, Sawazi Allah. And he won the Local Hero Award from Bay Nature Magazine, Young Leader Award. And Sawazi is a fisherman, so he knows his fish. And he also majored in environmental studies at UC Santa Cruz. So we feel really lucky to have him as the crew leader for Urban Tilth, as well as the rest of the Urban Tilth crew. They are amazing young people. Okay, Middle Creek. This is the creek that flows into Cerrito Creek, and it's kind of hidden. It goes through some people's backyards. So we did some invasive plant removal and tarping here. There was a large area of fennel and pampas grass, and you can see it's south of the Orientation Center for the Blind and behind some houses on Adams. So Urban Tilth, they removed a bunch of these weeds, and then we tarped what was left to suppress regrowth. Okay, Codornices Creek. This is the creek that is on the border between Berkeley and Albany. So Urban Tilth did a lot of work here. They laid erosion control cloth, planted some natives. We did some watering. They took out a lot of invasive plants, including Marlowe's got this giant fennel bulb. That's what he's holding there. They also mowed weeds along the pathway, and they pruned willow branches back from the pathway as well. So Friends of Five Creeks, they wanted to install a job box along Codornices Creek to hold tools and supplies for volunteers and also for Urban Tilth to use. So Urban Tilth, they dug an area for the box, and then they mixed and poured concrete and then put the box in place, fastened it with bolts and nuts. And we figured, well, we'll see how long it lasts, maybe a week, and somebody will take it out. It's still there, so we're pretty amazed. We're happy about that, and Susan Schwartz was happy too. And I'll take any questions that people have now.
Questions from commissioners? Doesn't sound like we have any. Oh, there we go. Brian, go ahead. Brian, Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Margot. It was excellent update with all the photos and seeing what everybody's doing behind the scenes there. And I'm glad to hear that there's work happening with the East Bay Regional Parks, because they're going through the same kind of things as you said. And a few questions. One is, you showed a condo complex shielding part of the hill from wind. Would you say that if people were to build a new condo complex at the base of the hill near Pierce Street, in the 11-acre parcel, the southern end, southwest corner of the hill, that might also shield trees and monarch areas up further up the hill?
Possibly. It would depend on where it's built and how high it is, and that's something that would actually have to be the subject of another study, I would say. to know the details about that, because there are some areas of vegetation there that provide quite a bit of wind exposure protection. So yeah, that's that's something that would have to be studied later.
Further looked at. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had one report in the agenda packet, and then it seemed like you highlighted two other reports. Are those not in the agenda packet because they're not finished? You were giving a sneak preview, or what was that?
Yeah, the fuel load study isn't complete yet, and the expanded monarch habitat assessment, they'll both should be complete by early summer, and then we'll have another update and include those in to whichever body, either you guys or city council.
Okay. And then last question is, there was the color-coded map that showed looking at from the top down on the hill, that showed the different vegetation zones. And I noticed to the west, there was a huge number of trees, several times the size of what the city owns, that is owned by the condos and various landowners on the west side of the hill. Has the city been working with those property owners? Is there an agreement for the city to do work there to mitigate fire issues and dying trees, or are the owners doing something themselves and reporting to the city what they're doing? Is there anything like that going on?
At this time, they're doing a minimal amount of fire reduction work. For the condos, they're doing about 50 feet of fire safety mowing and clearing out dead and down material. We are working with the private landowners, and we plan to continue working with them, sharing information that we're learning from the studies that we're doing. And we want to have meetings with them and to continue to stay in touch with them. We actually, on the 11-acre property, we do fire safety mowing at the request of the fire department so that they can access those roads safely. But yeah, we want to continue to work with them and do what we can to help them make their properties fire safe, and also to help the monarchs.
And a related question, follow-up, is are they being included in grant proposals for mitigating some of the possible hazards, or is it anticipated that somehow, because there was some question as to if for example a large number of trees need to be removed, a big ticket expense there, as there talk about how that would be funded, or are grants being considered with the private property in mind?
The grant that we're doing now, not, but we are looking into what kinds of grants we could possibly do that might include private landowners. We're not sure what that would be at this point. Actually, Devora, our program manager at Public Works, she may know more about that. But yeah, we definitely want to see what we can find to help them out.
Okay, thanks.
And just, I wanted to clarify on Brian's question. So that would be the responsibility of the homeowner or the landowner to
Correct.
keep it fire safe, but the city
Yes.
sometimes helps out in the interest of the general good kind of thing. Is that?
Well, we help out with, we have our crews do the fire safety mowing on that one undeveloped property, but the condos, they pay for their own fire mitigation work, doing the mowing 50 feet from their back fence.
Okay, but the kind of the question mark is, there's this other undeveloped property by other landowners that sort of fits in this gray area. So, okay, well, other commissioners, do you have questions? Oh, Commissioner Armendariz.
Yeah. Hi, Margot. I just wanted to see if I understood the report that we received about the 37 trees. So is there like a timeline for the removal of those that were identified, or are you now at the point where you're like raising money to do that work? I was a little bit unclear on that.
Yeah. So what they were saying is that their opinion is that the trees are okay within a 5-year time period. They're not going to, the likelihood of them falling right now is low. So that gives us a little bit of time, more time than we thought we had originally, to come up with a plan that will find a way to remove the trees in stages, most likely. Probably ones that are the most hazardous, and then something like that, or in different areas. So, yeah, we're not sure exactly how many years the whole process is going to take, and that's why we're getting a consultant to help us come up with a plan to figure out a more precise time frame and where trees can be removed first and second and so on.
So other commissioners, any questions, more questions? No. Okay, I do.
Commissioner Beal, we have Devorah's auditor here, and
Yeah.
she can tell us some more about funding and grants.
Oh, okay. So I'm just slightly a bit thrown off. So we already had the staff report. All right. So we're gonna have the rest of the staff report, and then we may have more.
Well, she can speak more to the funding side of it.
Okay, but I'm just pointing out we may have more questions after she speaks. So take it away, Devorah.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I'm speaking directly to the previous question that was asked of Margot. I think she covered all of the bases in her report. So just to speak to the question, and good evening, Commission, just to speak to the question regarding grant funding and work on the private property. There's some nuance to the process for acquiring public funds for use on lands that are not public. So there are certain programs that may include scope for that. The current program, as Margot mentioned, the current program that we are applying to with the Coastal Conservancy does not include, at least right now, does not include specific provisions for funding work on private property. That said, staff is continuing to work with the private property owners to discuss partnerships in various ways, and should an opportunity come up that makes provision for work in these areas, an agreement would be worked on between the various parties. But yes, we're very excited about the meeting we had with East Bay Regional Parks. Their staff has gone through some of the same grant process that we find ourselves in, both for planning and for construction, eventual construction. So we look forward to learning from their experiences.
And Commissioner Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, a follow-up question is, I wonder, I mean, it sounds like some of the issues would be solved, maybe other issues would be created, but if the landowners actually sold off all that wooded land to the city, has any of, then they would all be eligible for grants, and this be the city's responsibility, and the city would gain a lot of parkland. Has any of that been in part of the discussions?
I'll defer to perhaps my leadership on this one.
I think there has been some kind of high level discussions about how to tackle that. The specific issue of us taking on that land has not come up, but it's something that we can look into.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Okay. I see we have a couple people for public comment. I just want to point out we still are on item 5, which is the eucalyptus trees and so forth on Albany Hill and the creeks. We're not on the street tree removal item yet, if you want to comment. So go ahead, let people in. Patrice, it looks like you're speaking, but
deals actually. So I have been living at the bottom of Albany Hill for more than 40 years. I'm owner here in one of these mysterious properties on the west side. And I've seen things happen. There was even a fire of Albany Hill a long time ago. Started at Pierce Street, it went all the way to the top of the hill. Fire department did not fight it because poison oak was burning. There was a lot of poison oak. If you breathe poison oak, you die. So they let it burn. Nothing much happened. I mean, it was very pretty, but very few. There might be one eucalyptus which got some sort of problem. Ultimately, it got really scorched, but the others got scorched at the base. They didn't burn. At the time, there was absolutely no fire treatment for the Albany Hill whatsoever. And many of the eucalyptuses were touching gate view. So the big buildings, you had squirrels coming on the terraces, okay? Because there were some giant trees with the branches literally touching the windows or the terraces. So I think the big scare about the gigantic fire and things like that is overdone. It's true that poison oak burns extremely well. I hate poison oak. I think it should be reduced. There are ways to do that. In Redwood Regional Parks, they have used goats. It works very well. They love poison oak. They eat it, and it's over. I've been saying for a very long time we should bring a team of goats and just eat the whole poison oak, and then it's done for a few years because it goes back very slowly. So if people want to prevent a fire, I mean, that's the thing to do. But even if there was a fire right now, it won't be a big deal because the big eucalyptuses, contrary to reputation, do not burn. They get scorched at the base, and that's it, like most big trees. Like if you have big sequoias, for example, the coast varieties, sempervirens, they basically normally do not burn if there is not a gigantic understory. Which brings me to another point. The policy of the city so far has been to cut some of the native endangered trees which used to be on Albany Hill a long time ago, like 2 centuries ago, and which are trying to grow back. There is a whole list of them: the Brewster pine, Monterey pines, Monterey cypresses, and East Bay juniper, of which we have one in direct sight of Gateview. It's magnificent. Now, these trees, most of them are endangered, they are extremely precious, and they have been systematically cut by the city. It's completely defeating. I understand the reason. The reason there will be fire ladders in case of fire, and then the big trees will catch fire. But with this reasoning, applied, say, to the Amazon or wherever, the native vegetation never come back. Now, the United Nations has determined that starting in a few years, in 2030, no big trees should be cut anywhere anymore, because big trees, and the studies originally were done actually in Northern California, big trees absorb a lot of CO2 and little grass does not. So the tree in the world which does absorb tons of CO2 a year is actually the Sequoia sempervirens. And I have advocated actually to try to plant some on Albany Hill. I don't see why they could not grow. It's true they've been cut a long time ago here, but they will absorb the fog, they will make their own humidity, and they are extremely fire resistant, and they grow extremely fast. You can have a tree which is 100 feet tall after 30 years, even if you start very small. That happened on UC Berkeley. They planted plenty of ridiculously small trees 30 years ago. Now they are absolutely giant. They're 10 stories high. So
I hate to interrupt. Commissioner Chair Beal, are you able to see the clock?
On the
I'm
north side.
sorry, I thought it was usually the staff that made that call. I see that that it was reset. Patrice, could you kind of wrap up your comments? And thank
Yeah,
you.
my wrap up, my comment will be that we have to plant trees, native trees. We have to absolutely not cut anymore native trees, especially which are trying to grow back. There are actually Monterey cypresses, which are either mature and some are trying to grow back. These trees should be absolutely preserved, and at the limit, we should cut a few.
I think that's a good summary. Let's go on to the next commenter. And I apologize, but we do have to respect limits. Can we have the next Jeremiah?
Thank you, Chair Bill. Good evening, everybody. I would just like to point out a few things that I've noticed. I noticed at the beginning of the meeting, we read a land acknowledgement.
I'm sorry, Jeremiah. We're on a specific topic.
Yeah, I know. Would you just let me finish,
please? We can talk about that, but the beginning of the meeting, that's.
Would you let me finish, please, and not interrupt me? Thanks. So, with the land acknowledgement,
I'm sorry,
Albany Hill.
Jeremiah, let's stay on this is.
I am. If you would stop interrupting me, please. If you would stop interrupting me, that would be great. So, man. So we have this land acknowledgement statement with the Ohlonies. We have a commitment, and Albany Hill is Ohlone territory. So I was wondering if anybody's reached out to any native Ohlonies on any advice on this, on native plants. Because I'm kind of concerned that we're doing all this ourselves without getting the Ohlonies involved. And it would be nice if they could advise on which native plants to plant, because they know more about native plants than anybody else because they are native. And I was just wondering, with all the plants that were planted in front of Albany Hill next to the driveway, right there on the left, last year there was this lady wearing a safety vest planting plants in a grid format, and she carried in water to water each plant. And I was just, wondering and hoping those were approved because they looked really nice, and I kind of cared for them as well. So I was just wondering if anybody knows anything about those plants that were planted up there by the front of the driveway, and if those are, monarch friendly kind of things. One thing about poison oak is it's not really good to burn because it can get in people's lungs and cause poison oak inside your lungs. So burning poison oak really isn't a great thing. People could breathe it in, and then all of a sudden you got poison oak inside your body, which is very dangerous. So a monarch habitat is great. I love the butterflies, and anything we can do to protect their habitat is wonderful. They, hopefully they're an endangered species, and us as the human race, we're the top dogs, so we have to protect all the little ones.
And Jeremiah, you can have a little extra time because I gave the other guy extra time and I cut you off, so you could keep going for a little bit if you want.
We all need to take care of the little guys, just like the butterflies, and we need to do what we can to protect the environment. And I just want to say one more thing, that it would be nice to maybe somebody reach out to the Ohlone tribe so they feel welcome in any decision making on Ohlone territory. Thank you for your time.
And the good news is Margot went over that. I guess maybe you're coming in later, but she went over that, and that the representatives from the tribe did meet with Urban Tilds and saw some of that. So maybe hopefully you have a chance to catch up later. So those are good concerns. I don't see anyone else with their hands up. So sorry. So I guess the commissioner comments. And I don't think we have an action item, but just if there's any discussion the commission wants to have. Commissioner Abbott.
I'll just jump in and say, Margot, thank you for a very extensive report. I learned a lot, and I feel much more. You covered a lot. You covered a lot, and it was great. So thank you very much.
Sorry, it's getting dark, so I couldn't find the Alt-A key. So are there any other commissioners? Or I guess, what I wanted to say is, and it does sort of dovetail from Jeremiah's comment, that I was relieved to see that that the members of the Ohlone tribe met and were part of this process. I also want to say recently I visited Albany Hill and saw some of the work that has been done on the crest of the hill with the new steps and so forth. It's very, very nice, very enjoyable. I had to go at the time, but I didn't have a chance to enjoy it as much as I want. The other comment I wanted to make, that what I guess everyone needs to be aware of is that the city's actions are limited when it comes to private property. We can't just go up. I don't know how much of that came into play with Patrice's comments, but it may be the case that there's private land and the city just isn't able to do whatever they feel like on this land. But Commissioner Abbott, on to you.
Yeah, actually, I thought maybe for the benefit of the folks who are watching or participating, if staff would say something about goats as a possibility for the poison oak, I certainly would like to see those poison oak, and also kind of the observation that it seemed to this speaker that some of these native plants were being removed when maybe they could be kept. If there's any response to that, I'd be interested.
Yeah, goats are definitely a possibility because they can go in on steep slopes, which there are a lot of on Albany Hill, and eat all kinds of weeds that it's hard to get to places for people to do that kind of work. And they do eat poison oak and all kinds of other shrubs. As to the native plants that are being removed, I'm not sure what the speaker is talking about. We do preserve we have a list of native plants, and we go by that list that was created by a botanist from UC Berkeley in the 1990s. And so we go by that list of native plants, and we do not remove native plants on the hill. We take out invasive plants to allow the native plants to return.
I think the observation was that perhaps it was being used as part of fire control. That these plants were creating fire ladder, and things like that. That's kind of the sense I got. I'm just curious if there's any observation on that or any knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, ladder fuels. It's mainly eucalyptus. There's other invasive plants, cotoneaster, French broom. I could give you a whole list of plants. I mean, Monterey pine is a native plant, but it's not native to the hill.
Okay, that's good. All right, well, thank you very much. I just wanted to see that we answered those questions.
Okay, well, I think if there's no other comments from the commissioners, I think we'll thank you very much, everyone from the staff, and especially Margot, and then we'll go on to the next item. If I can find my window here. So the next item is going to be the street tree removals. We have, there are 6 addresses, 6. Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, we're getting John on the screen.
Okay. Well, while he's getting on the screen, I'll just name the 6 addresses then. 620 Curtis is a Chinese pistache. 654 San Gabriel is a coast live oak. 841 Santa Fe is a liquid amber. There's a parenthesis 2 there, so I think that means there's 2 trees. 1435 Thousand Oaks Boulevard is a camphor. 1000 San Pablo Avenue is a Mexican fan palm. And 1350 Washington Avenue is a sweet gum. Are you ready to take it away, John? Except we don't hear you. You're muted. Mute.
There we go.
Ah.
Hello?
Well, the real John Hawkridge, please step forward.
I'm unmuted and ready to go. I'm gonna present my my slideshow, my screen here. If I could figure out how to do the share screen.
Alt F on a Windows system.
I think I did it. Did I do it? Are you seeing?
That's Linux, not Windows. Yeah. So, yeah, we see it.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll start. First, I want to start by saying that we just completed planting 184 new trees throughout the city. We had Arborists Now Incorporated, a arbor tree care company out of San Francisco, and we filled in a lot of empty spaces throughout the city. So I'm also noticing a lot of private trees, private property, people planting trees in the planting strip, in the right of way, that we did not plant or permit, but there's a lot of good trees, nice trees out there. When a property owner plants their own trees, they take care of the trees too. So I'm seeing at least 200 new trees this year, 200 new street trees. So, so that's the good news. On to the difficult part of my presentation tonight. So we can start with 620 Curtis. There's a Chinese, where is it? Let me skip that one. I think I moved that to the back. I'll get to that one last. We'll go to 654 San Gabriel first. There's a coast live oak. It's sort of in the greenway. It's actually growing underneath the property fence, the fence between a private property and 654 in the greenway area. It looks to me like a volunteer oak. These live oaks pop up. They like to pop up along fence lines and places where they're kind of sheltered. And this one apparently did that. So it's been uplifting and damaging her fence. And it's been crowded out by other trees and other plantings there. So let's look at the pictures. Here's the fence, and you can see that the tree is basically rooted right directly beneath the fence. The fence is blown over. It's been propped up and blown over and propped up and blown over. But because of all the other plantings here, it's grown at this in this strange shape. It's grown out looking for sunlight. There's a Chinese elm tree in the background on the right side of the photo. And on the left side, it's hard to see, but under the upright part of the oak, there's an olive tree that was planted by the city in the greenway. And that's all I have for that. But the issue here is that it's damaging the property owner's fence. The tree really doesn't have a future to grow out to its full size and shape. It's basically a volunteer, even though it's a live oak volunteer. We try to preserve the live oaks where we can, but I think in this case, the right thing to do would be to remove this tree and allow the owner to repair their fence. We have a couple red oaks to the left of this tree that were planted over the last 2 or 3 years. And there is a live oak. If you look at this picture and imagine through the Chinese elm tree, there's a live oak on the other side, which is the back of 654 San Gabriel property. that's a full-size mature live oak. So that's what I have for this. I recommend that this tree be removed.
Just a procedural question, because it was brought up to me by one of the commissioners. And do we want to go through these one at a time and have question and answers so it's more fresh in mind? Or do we want to wait and do all the trees at the end? It's just as far as the commissioner questions, not the public comment, or do people have a feeling about that?
Chair Beal, if I may say something to the process, we do have some commissioners who need to recuse themselves from some of the applications, from participating in the discussion and voting of the applications, because they live within 500 feet of the tree.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be to take one application at a time.
Yeah. Would you enlighten me, because this is the first I've heard of this. Would you enlighten me as to which commissioners have to recluse from which trees?
Yeah, so we only have 2 commissioners who have to recuse themselves. Commissioner Abbott lives within 500 feet of the tree on St. Gabriel. And Commissioner Chang Frank lives within 500 feet of the tree on Washington.
Okay, but they're two different trees that they have to recluse themselves with. Okay, yeah. So the reason this is an important point. Oh, okay. We have 5 tonight. Okay, because we had 2 absences. I just need to make sure that we still have a quorum for each of the trees. So, okay. So yes. So what we will do then. So this is the San Gabriel tree. So I think did Brian already step off, or
that's me. That's me.
No,
I will step off. I will step off.
I think the deal is you don't have to leave the meeting. Just turn off your video or something. I don't know. What do you have guidance there, Isabel?
I'll be listening, but you won't hear from me.
You just turn off your video so it looks like you're not here.
I'll be back in a few.
Yes, that's
and then turn it back on when the item. So okay, so we're going to discuss this. This is the San Gabriel tree, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to discuss this item as if it were a separate item on the agenda. And I want to just lead with my question because I'm talking. It's hard for me to stop. My question was, so there were several factors that were brought up here. One was the fence, and the other was the other trees. And I know this looks pretty bad from this angle. I'll throw 2 questions together. One is this all of the tree, what we're looking at, this L? And the second thing is, if those other factors weren't there, if the fence wasn't there and the other trees weren't there, would this tree would it have a chance of being a good tree, or is it just would still be hopeless?
Sure. If the fence weren't there and the other trees weren't there, the tree would be growing upright as it would want to grow. It would have sunlight and it would have room to grow, and there wouldn't be the issue of damaging private property.
Actually, so let me rephrase the question, because I didn't do it right. I think if we were to cut away today, if we were to take away the fence and take away those trees, would the tree in the future become a good tree? You understand the difference? Like, we can't go back in time, but
I think I understand. The way the tree is now, take away the other factors. I think this tree would grow upright from where it is as it's starting to grow now, but as it grows, the weight would increase and eventually the thing would fall over. It would more than likely uproot and fall over.
Okay. All right. That was my question. Other commissioners have questions on this tree? And thank you, John. No other questions? Okay. So for public comment, members of the public, if you want to comment just on this tree, on the Gabriel tree, go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see anyone now. So I guess we'll go, we'll go ahead, a panelist. Go ahead, Chairman, our former Chairman. So,
yeah,
we've been together on too many things. But,
yeah, I guess I had a sort of a general question about this tree and the other ones. It was if usually I find it very helpful to have the photos of each tree from different angles and the applications that we can look at in the agenda packet, but I didn't see any of that this time. If John could address that.
I noticed that as well. Thank you.
It just wasn't included this time.
So you put pictures and everything together, but it wasn't posted?
It wasn't included in it with the staff report.
So you submitted it, but then it wasn't posted, or you didn't submit it?
What do you mean posted?
It's that when I look at the agenda with all the attachments, the HTML version on the city's website, I don't know if you're able to see the agenda for tonight's meeting.
If I could help out a little bit, if so, was there something submitted before last Wednesday that didn't make it into the packet? Or was it submitted after?
No, I didn't submit pictures with the staff report.
Yeah, so it's a timing thing. Sometimes we have issues with timing with getting things into the.
Okay, well, I would.
I'm equally disappointed. So
we've always had those in the past, and they've been very helpful. I would encourage you to ask that they be included in the future.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, so Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, I guess this is a question to staff. Would this even be really considered a proper public notice if we didn't include pictures? Because then I mean, this is going to continue through this whole series of trees that we see, but just it's a question of, was this proper public notice if nobody could actually view pictures and see what the trees were? It would require them actually having to go to those addresses and find them. So it's just a question.
So I guess the question for staff is, was the legal requirement for notice met in the case of the street tree removal applications that we have before us tonight?
I don't think there's a requirement to submit photos for this.
Okay, so the legal requirement was met.
Well, usually we also see the actual application and
I'm aware of that. My question is, was the legal requirement met for us to consider this item? Because if it was, then we have to consider it. We can't say, we can't say now, well, we wish there were photos. It's disappointing there weren't, but unless it's a legal requirement to post those photos, then then it's a moot point. You see, help me out, someone from the staff here.
John, just want to jump in here. My understanding, and if you can take a look at this, that the real requirement, the specific requirement in the street tree policy is the public notice that's posted on the tree, and then the mailers being sent out. Is that the case?
You asking me?
Yes.
This was done, yeah.
Right, but that's the specific if that's the specific requirement on noticing, are there other requirements with respect to posting applications and pictures?
I pretty sure not. I'm kind of skimming through the policy right now. I don't see anything along those lines.
So I think what this is a case of something we wish were the case, isn't, but it's not at our discretion as a commission, because the Brown Act requires this was posted in the agenda and the legal requirements were met, we have to consider it. So that's, bar any legal, the city attorney coming in and saying something different, we have to consider this application. Go ahead, Pros Commissioner Chang Frank.
I'm going to have to recuse myself for the Washington Street one. So I just want to ask this question because it's a process question too. Were all were mailers sent out to everybody? Because I don't remember getting a mailer, and that just could totally be my oversight, but that's a question.
Well, mailers were sent out 16 days before tonight. Your property is about 30 feet beyond the 150-foot radius of the property.
It's a 500 radius. 500.
Oh, it's 150 foot.
I thought it was 500.
Well,
I think we're running into two different criteria. One criteria about the mailers, and then another criteria about
Thanks, Matt.
So
I'm cutting in when I shouldn't, as usual.
Okay, that's not okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. The recusal area is actually wider than the notice area. We learn something every day. Okay. Where are we here? We're back at, so do we have any other comments from commissioners about this tree? Any discussion? Okay. Well, I guess we go to a vote then. Can we have a roll, or we go to a, I'm sorry.
One more comment. One more comment with this tree. It's technically on both private property and public property. So in a case like that, in a legal situation, both property owners have a stake in this tree. So it's half their tree, half our tree. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, I'm looking at it, technically the city would have the right to cut the tree where it crosses the line, but then that would just totally destroy the tree and would really not be a friendly thing to do. So, okay. So does someone want to make a motion to either approve or deny this?
We have to take public comment.
No one's, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't see the hands. Can we let them in?
Thank you. So for me, this picture, it looks like the tree is planted in private property. It's kind of hard to tell from the angle of the tree or not. Can't see where the trunk or the root
It's
lies.
on the private property, but it's sticking out into public. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so that is a kind of a tough call. So I mean, it's rooted on private property. So does the owner want to remove it? Is that the issue? I mean, the owner wants to remove it, or the owner does not want to remove it?
The owner wants it removed. She brought this to my attention.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, if the owner wants to remove it and it's causing a problem, then, that would be fine, of course, because, the owner wants to do it, and then potentially it could fall on someone that's getting a suntan or reading a book on the city property. But with all due respect to, policies and procedures, hopefully it's done the right way. But yeah, I wouldn't see anything with removing it, except for, did anybody notice the bird nest up there?
I didn't see any bird nest in the tree when I was there.
I'm sorry, I accidentally muted myself. And I was wondering what months of the year is it to where we're not allowed to cut down trees? Because I do recall somewhere in some meeting last year, a couple of years ago, I remember something saying that we can only cut down trees and within certain months of the year. That's all my comment. I am done.
Okay, it's the bird nesting season is February through August 15th, February 1st through August 15th. And it's for trees where there's an active nest observed in the tree. So no nesting was observed in this tree. We're in that period though. Yes, you're correct with that.
Yeah, looking at this, it's almost reminding me of one of those mystery spot places, where the buildings kind of. Okay, any more comments? Yeah.
Could I jump in here? I just want to be sensitive to the sort of non-standard application process that we have right here, and I maybe throw something out on the table that if the commission would like to take another route, would be to table this until next meeting, and then we can renotice it, make sure we have a full application process with the pictures so that we have a proper discussion. We take this very seriously, and these are important decisions, and so I want to maybe throw that out there as a possible avenue.
I appreciate your insight. I think in order to make that move, I would want to hear advice from the city attorney before doing it, because my view from the legal requirements is we are required to hear this. We can't arbitrarily just say, you know, if the legal notice requirements were made, I think we have to do this. I mean, I appreciate the suggestion. I just don't think. But does someone from the staff want to comment or?
Commissioner Beal, can I say something just from
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, before we go down this road too far, I would say that it seems like there's people here tonight, at least one person who wanted to comment on these on this item, and if they've waited patiently for an hour and then we don't allow them to comment, and then they have to come back next meeting. So why don't we hear it out? I do think we can still, recognizing that there is this problem with public noticing, still do that as a commission, right? We can still make the motion to hear it again next month, but I at least want to give those people who are here a chance to comment, if that's
yeah, I'm just and I agree with all that, and that's why I'm reluctant to go anywhere near this direction. I just don't think there's been sufficient. We met the city's requirement. Now, if the city's requirements aren't stringent enough, I think that's the topic of another meeting. Pushing this for street tree removal, the owner is entitled to due process, and that's how I feel about it. But
maybe Isabel can chime in on how that works, because I know if, for example, a meeting goes too late, a commission or a body can push an item on to.
That hasn't happened though. That's not an example. This is an example of this is before us now. We're supposed to decide.
But the question would be: is one of those decisions to table it? Is that something that we can do?
So per the policy, the noticing requirements have been met. I think the issue that I think we're faced with tonight is the information in the staff report that was not the same as what you usually get. It doesn't mean that you cannot make a decision tonight based on the information presented in the presentation that John is providing tonight. But you could certainly go through all the applications, listen to the comments from the public, and table your decisions to the next meeting. So you could do that, or you could make decisions this evening.
I want to know if we could do this. Can we? Because if what Commissioner Chang Frank is saying, and I believe it's true, that there are people in the audience that want to speak. Could we hear them speak and take their opinion as to whether they want to table it or not? I don't know, but I would be reluctant to table it without hearing the words from the city attorney that we're allowed to do that.
No, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to take an item and table it if you wish to table it. But because in respect of the the participants or of the residents who are waiting for this item, you could certainly take their comments this evening. And if the commission feels that they don't have enough information to vote on the application, they can choose to table it to the next meeting. Okay. Or you can also go for a vote and see if it passes or not.
Okay, so what I think I want to do here, and I'll let you chime in if I want to make sure it's to your agreement, Commissioner Chang Frank. What I'm going to suggest is we go ahead and have the public comment. After the public comment, we'll have any commissioner comments, and then we'll all ask for a motion, and I'll take either a motion to approve or deny the street tree removal or to table it till the next meeting. Does that sound fair to you, Commissioner Chang Frank?
Sure.
Okay, well, let's do that. So let's, I think we've got Becca Black, Bob Cipher.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I think what I think we should do, sorry, I don't want to step on toes here.
Go ahead.
But if the commenters don't want to comment on this particular tree, which I don't think anybody's raising their hand, then I don't think we need to ask for their comments before we've seen.
We're doing one tree at a time.
Okay, got it.
This is for the San Gabriel tree.
Yep.
I'm going to take comments for that tree, and then we'll proceed from there.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let them in. I just want to say this is specifically Bob. I think you're up. Yeah. Specifically, we're doing this one tree on San Gabriel. Go ahead. Let them in.
Hi guys, this is Bob Cipher. I wanted to comment on the 841 Santa Fe Avenue.
No, we're going to take that up separately. So
Correct.
This is just for the San Gabriel tree.
Correct. I just got a notice on my computer to speak, so I just wanted to say it. This is the tree I want to speak on.
Okay, we'll talk about that when we haven't come to that item yet. So come back. Does that sound good? Yeah, Jeremiah.
Thank you. So I just want to say one thing, just regarding transparency to the public and all fairness to the surrounding neighbors and public comment. I'm all for that. So whatever your decision is wonderful. I'm not really in place to make any recommendations, but what would make sense to me would possibly just table this item maybe to the next meeting. That way the public can get properly notified if they weren't properly notified. That way we did everything fair and square. And I think the community deserves that from our leaders, from our elected officials. And so that's all I've got to say on that.
Okay, so that was everyone that had their hands up. So I guess I'll take, any comments from commissioners, and then we can have, or a motion, or we'll have comments and then a motion. Commissioner Martin.
I just wanted to respond to Jeremiah's comment that what we heard from the staff was that it was properly noticed, and proper notification was a sign on the tree and postcards that went out to people within 150 feet. And so in that sense, it's been properly noticed, and the letter of the law has been met.
Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to talk about this tree because this is the item. Just want to focus on that and move forward. But I would say, personally, I don't know if we're going to apply this public notice concern that we might have to all trees, and because there's 6 of them or 5 of them.
Let's stay on this tree, please.
No, I'm just wanting to make the point that I actually have no objections to the removal of this tree, but I also don't want to be sort of inconsistent with not, being okay with taking this one out, but not being okay with another one because the other ones were anyway. But my opinion about this tree, I think there's a separate thing about public notice for this tree, is that given that it's in this kind of situation, the neighbor, or I think that, the owner might even be partly on the owner's property, that I have no objection. I would, vote to allow removal of this tree. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. So, and I personally, I would find it hard to fathom why anyone would object to removing this tree. So, that's, I guess, why I would think it might be different from one tree to another, because this one looks pretty uncontroversial. I think there's some of the others that are more like the one that people want to talk about, I think is a different story. So Commissioner Martin.
If we're done commenting on this, when I make a motion to approve the tree removal application.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote? Thank you, Commissioner Martin. And
So Commissioner Abbott is recused, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal.
Yes.
You missed, or
Did I? Oh, sorry about that. Commissioner Chang Frank.
I think you called her.
Who did I miss?
Commissioner Armendariz.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Armendariz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion carries. It's good news. We found Commissioner Armendariz because we wouldn't have had a quorum. Brian, your hand is up. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that tree carries the day. I gotta say, I'm not gonna be sad to see it go. And I really do feel like, if I were this property owner, I'd probably be a little bit upset if this had gotten pushed. But that's my final remark. So the next tree.
All right.
Actually, now wait a second. Now, can we do this? Because there's one other recusal. Maybe we should do the one that's got the recusal, and then we could try to do the rest together. Does that make any sense? Or what's the other one that has a recusal? Santa Fe?
Chair, I think we should just stay with the order.
Okay.
That we have, that John has.
This is what people want to talk about too. So okay.
Okay, this one is 841. There's a typo here, Santa Fe Avenue. There are 2 liquid amber trees, 2 mature trees. In one of our wider planting strips, a 6-foot wide planting strip. And here are the 2 trees. These 2 trees are the same age, planted together, but one's been overshadowed by the other, so it's grown smaller. The tree on the right is to the south, so it's been blocking the sun from the second tree. The issue here is sidewalk damage. And you can see in this photo the kind of roller coaster effect on the sidewalk these trees have caused. The sidewalk was repaired twice by the property owner on their dollar. And this is the result. They repaired it. They did the right thing. They curved out the sidewalk. They arced it back from the tree trunk. But these roots continue to grow and continue to lift the sidewalk. You can see at the bottom center where the roots are starting to kind of hug the concrete and grow over the sidewalk. Liquid amber are very aggressive growers, both in the crown and in the roots. This is the second tree, and you can see similar. The roots are pushing. They're very shallow roots. They're pushing the sidewalk and lifting it where it had been repaired twice already. And I'm not sure about the first repair, but the second one, you can see obviously they did try to provide more space for the tree. So there's about maybe a 7.5 foot wide planting strip here, but we're still seeing these problems. You can see from this angle how this tree is also affecting the neighbor's sidewalk and has lifted it. And the neighbor has done some repairs to their sidewalk and their driveway. And the tree continues to lift the sidewalk and do damage to their property as well. Here's the long view. On the left, you can see the curb being pushed out, lifted and pushed out by the one root going down towards the left on this. Here's a little closer shot. You can see, again, damage to the neighbor's driveway. You can see where the neighbor had done some sidewalk patching from tree damage. Here again, you can see how the curb has been broken up into blocky sections and being pushed out. Right below the trunk of the tree, there's a water main right there. Here's the other view looking the other direction of the curb. This is the second tree, and you can see this property's driveway is broken into pieces. There's a drain pipe that's been pushed out. You can kind of see the lift where there's space under the sidewalk, basically, where the roots have lifted the sidewalk above the soil level. You can see where on the bottom left side, you can see where the the sidewalk has been shaved down to address one of the lifted sections of concrete. And this is looking from the property out towards the street. Again, the smaller tree we're looking at on the right here, you can see how it's lifted the sidewalk and is growing out into their front yard. You can see part of the root again on the bottom left. And again, you can see the roller coaster effect and the lift of the neighbor's driveway up in the top right area. And this is just, again, these are the roots pushing against the curb here. They push the curb out several inches. There is the pole right there. You can see the sidewalk lifted here, the curb lifted, the street is being affected. Also, these trees in the crown area, they've been basically topped. They've been stubbed off. Just about every major limb of this tree has been stubbed off in the past. So that leaves future growth, precarious future growth as those stubs decay and multiple branches want to grow out of that cut section of the limb, and they compete with each other, and eventually they begin falling out of the tree. There's a little pressure on a wire here. I think this is, I'm not sure I think this is a PG&E, not excessive, not a large concern, but it's there. Again, some more shots, you can see stubs, you can see dark, just flat stubs on every major limb on this tree, on both trees. I'm not sure what happened there, why that was done. The property owner told me that there have been limb failures in the past. I'm not aware of any. I'm not sure how long ago, but, and what a limb is to a property owner compared to what we consider a limb may be two different things. But these are liquid ambers. If we do root pruning on these, we're damaging the tree, we're injuring it, we're causing the tree to stress. When a liquid amber stresses, it drops limbs. So, oops, wrong direction. So these trees are on our sidewalk repair list. They're going to be repaired during this next phase of sidewalk repair work. And it just, the extent of root pruning that would need to be done on these trees would really be harmful to these trees. As well, the roots will continue to grow as they have at least once, maybe 2 times since the sidewalk has been repaired twice before. So these trees qualify for non-emergency city tree removal per criteria 2.1C and 2.1D. So my recommendation is to have both of these trees removed. This is an area where there's no overhead pole-to-pole power lines. We can replant these with red maple, which is the replacement tree for liquid amber. When it's mature, it's a very similar tree, has the beautiful red fall color, but it doesn't destroy sidewalks like liquid ambers do, and it doesn't drop limbs, more importantly, as liquid ambers do. So my recommendation is for removal.
Are there questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, I was wondering, was this an initiation from the homeowners or something that you noticed?
I am not sure. Well, this came from our from James Sorelli, our sidewalk manager, sidewalk program manager. I look at all the locations that are on the list for sidewalk repair where there are trees, which is most of the sidewalk repair locations. Yes, and we went out together to look at this. We spoke to the property owner while we were there, and she let us know some of the history, let us know that she had done sidewalk repair on a couple occasions here. She and her husband tend to like having these trees in front of the house, but they understand the situation. They don't want to live with a tree that could potentially be hazardous after the sidewalk is once again repaired.
Yeah, but that's just something that's a different context. If the homeowner didn't ask for it, it actually might be a little sad. Just want to give the context there that it wasn't a homeowner initiated request.
I believe I'd have to talk to James. I don't know if James is available. If he's here, he said he might. Here he is. Question is, was this brought to your attention? I think the question is, was the sidewalk problem brought to your attention from the property owner, or is this something we found on?
Specifically, the street tree removal application. Did we initiate the street tree removal, or did the homeowner? Or because it sounds like it's a little bit of both.
We did.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it sounds like you consulted with them, and it sounds more of you discovered the problem, consulted with the homeowner, and they're like, great. Is that accurate description?
Basically, yes.
Okay, other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Abbott.
Hey, John, I'd like to look at the, I think that the tree that's furthest away in this image, there's some potential to keep that one. That one didn't seem nearly as destructive as the other. But I wonder, the major destruction from that one, I think, is the driveway. Can we go back to that picture where we see the neighbors? Yeah. I wasn't, when I was over there, I wasn't convinced that that was caused by this tree. Are you pretty sure that this sort of damage could only be caused by the tree, or?
Well, what sometimes happens, it's hard to say unless we excavate and look at everything underground, but where roots are lifting or roots are growing out and kind of changing the surface level, there's subduction where soil is backfilling in where the roots have lifted sections of the earth here.
So you can't really know for sure, but it's certainly possible.
I believe this is. I mean, I think the next property over has a sidewalk with one of the stamp in it from when it was installed, and I think it said 1934. I'm not sure. It was sometime.
Sounds about right.
A long time ago, and it's in really nice condition. It's not affected by this. So I imagine. I believe this had to do. I think that if it were only this tree, I would also recommend removal, just due to the fact that the sidewalk's been repaired a couple times, and you can see those roots extending out. It's going to damage the tree, and the sidewalk damage will continue.
Yeah, my only concern is these are the only large trees on that half of the block, so it's really going to be a loss.
That's true, and
if these are taken out.
And a lot of, I mean, these trees that we bring to you for sidewalk repair, they're going to be large trees. They're going to be mature trees, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of these, liquid amber just was the wrong species. It should have been planted anywhere.
How long will it take a red maple to I mean, maybe not this large, but be a noticeably large tree?
To reach this size,
not this size, but just, a big tree.
Well, yeah, 15 years. It'll
okay.
Decent sized tree.
I just wanted to clarify, we are replacing these trees, right? We're not.
These will be replaced, yes. And I already discussed that with the property owner.
Are there any of the street tree removals tonight that are a straight removal and not a replacement?
No.
Just the one we just voted on, I think, that I was recused myself.
Okay, yeah, right. Then that was obviously because it was divided between. Okay, that wasn't really a street tree. It was a tree removal, but it wasn't a street tree. It was different country. Okay,
I think that's my question. I thank you, John. I think that's all I had to say.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say on this one, this is the north tree, right? On this one, you can see where he also pointed out the sidewalk being uplifted where there's a hollow space underneath the sidewalk. So
yes, but that can be addressed. I mean, there are ways to handle that. Yeah.
Well, the roots coming out on the other side of this lawn, onto the lawn as well. So that root is crossing the sidewalk, and it's coming out here. So, okay, well, anyway, other questions from commissioners? Okay. All right. So
we're gonna the height of these trees and being the only large trees there, after root pruning makes them really susceptible to complete failure. Also, they're exposed. There's nothing buffering the wind that's coming through. And we're getting stronger and stronger winds, it seems. And what I hear is that's going to continue. That's a trend.
So I wanted to recap before we go to public comment. So this is a case where we have the sidewalk. Everyone knows the sidewalks in Albany are horrible. We need to do something about it. But, you know, how do we deal with it? One of the causes is old street trees that were not the correct tree for that spot. And so this was caused by just what to Chang Frank's comment, this was triggered by the sidewalk program, but it was, you know, it was done in coordination.
Can we go to public comment before we have discussion?
It's not a discussion. I'm summarizing. Yeah. So go ahead. Let them in.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. This is Becca Black. Thank you guys for being there tonight. So I live on the 700 block of Carmel. So not within the notification jurisdiction of any of these trees, but they're all in our daily, a lot of the trees tonight are in our daily walking area.
Becca, so we're only talking about this one tree at the moment. We're doing them one at a time because there's some.
Yeah, I understand.
So
yeah.
Do you have any comments on this tree?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I have some questions as well. Are you able to answer questions?
Yeah. The staff will be able to, yes.
So I just like liquid ambers too. We have one in our backyard. It's expensive. It drops limbs. It's a pain in the butt. It's not a great tree. But it provides a canopy. So here's my question. So hypothetically, if 10 liquid ambers in 1 square block, homeowners requested, they went through the sidewalk program, homeowners requested that they be removed. Is anyone looking at the gestalt of trees within a particular area being removed? So I guess these are the only 2 large trees on that block that I can recall either. Who is in charge of looking at the overall canopy and ambiance of a particular square block with tree removal? It seems like we're just looking at them individually. And can anyone speak to that?
What we'll do, Becca, is finish your question and comments, and then we'll go to the other 2 commenters, and then the staff will answer whatever questions they can.
Right, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Next commenter. Jeremiah.
Thank you. The picture displayed right now, I see a root coming from the tree on the grass, and it looks like the street tree is growing into the private property. And I'm just wondering, in this whole process, in the removal potentially, when digging all this up and dirt is exposed, is it possible to check the lateral line to make sure there's no roots getting close to the lateral line? And it might be a good time, you know, to maybe replace the lateral line if it's damaged, or if there's roots growing around it. And I'm not sure who would pay that expense if the street tree's roots cause damage to the lateral line on the property. You know, would the city be responsible because it's the city's tree? So that's one of my concerns. Another one of my concerns or questions is who is responsible for doing the bird nest study? Because those trees are really tall. So I'm wondering who climbed all the way to the top of the tree and inspected that one branch that's invisible because it's hiding behind all the other branches would make a perfect spot for a nest. And regarding to canopies, absolutely. You know, maybe there's not a nest in the tree, but maybe other trees land there, you know, or play in it, or grab little twigs to build a nest in another tree. You know, I noticed the shade coming from this tree actually goes into the property next door. And I'm wondering if the next door person was notified properly to attend this meeting and make public comment, because they might like the shade and the canopy from the tree, both of the trees. So I guess my main question would be, for staff, who would be responsible for getting the root right there in the grass on the private property and doing an inspection on the lateral line? Thank you.
Okay, we got Bob Cipher is up. Bob?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you good.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to me and having me. And this has been a very interesting meeting. I've learned a lot. So thank you. I might just have a few questions. Is it possible to be a bit more creative in the way you replace the sidewalks and possibly save large trees like this? These are very big trees. They seem to be incredibly healthy. I will agree that liquid ambers are problematic trees. They're all down the street, and I live at 730 Santa Fe, and I'm surrounded by a few of them. So I know that the limbs fall off and they're very brittle. They're also majestic trees, and many of us who live in the neighborhood were attracted to the large trees when we bought our homes. So is there a way to fix these driveways and sidewalks, elevating them a bit to save the trees? That's the first question. And would it be possible to remove one of the trees? I believe I heard that the tree at the picture we're looking at right now, the tree to the right wasn't developing as well as the tree to the left because of the lack of sun. Would it be possible to take out one tree and leave the other and still produce a safe sidewalk? And then my last question is replacement trees. I'm not alone in the neighborhood. People feel like the replacement trees are small. When they're put in, they're very small, and it's unclear who takes care of them, who waters them. There was a comment made earlier, I forget who made it, but when people put their own trees in, they water them and fertilize them and take care of them. But not so much when the city puts a tree in. Who waters the tree? Who takes care of it? I watered the tree at 733 Santa Fe for 1.5 years after that large tree was cut down, because the house was empty and it wasn't for sale. It was being remodeled. And so I walked across the street and watered the tree for 1.5 years just so it would live. So can we fix the sidewalk a little differently in the driveways? Can we save one tree or both? And can we put in, if we really have to take them out, can we put in larger trees, replacement trees, 8 feet, 9 feet tall? Can we do that? That's it. Thank you for hearing me. Thanks.
Aaron Frank is next.
Hi, can you hear me?
I hear you good.
Yeah, there are a couple of issues here, and they're going to pertain to other trees as well, but I'm speaking about these trees now. First is notice. I've got to say that I live in this neighborhood. I walk in this neighborhood. I drive through this neighborhood, and these notices couldn't be made more hidden if you tried. You take transparent tape and you tape a single sheet of paper onto the inside of a tree, and unless you are walking by and looking up and looking for it, and you have to be looking 365 days a year everywhere you go if you want to try to catch something like that. I'm not talking about legal notice, because that might have been done, but I'm talking about just courtesy to the people that live in the area and that care. So I think the notice was terrible. I mean, why not make it so that everybody who lives there can't miss it? That's what notice is about. So that's number one. Number two, the notice on for the public agenda didn't put anything up here. And I just want to chime in on a couple things that were said already. Number one, In this area, we've seen the removal of very large trees in the last couple months, just lots of them all at once. And the character of our neighborhood is starting to change in a worse way. Sometimes there are trees that there is no option. And when that happens, it's sad to see them go, but that has to be done. But there have been many times I've come to these meetings and, you can barely see what's going on with the sidewalk. In this case, okay, we see a little roller coaster here, but we have passed a tax so that we as citizens, as taxpayers, will pay for the replacement of the sidewalk. I say, why don't we take a risk every once in a while, repair the sidewalk and see how they do. And if 10 years down the road, there's a problem, we'll say, oh, we got it wrong, but we saved a couple of trees. And I got to tell you, most of the time, we probably won't get it wrong because these sidewalks have been here for 100 years. And of course, there's going to be some settling of the soil. There's going to be some movement, and God forbid that we have to replace a sidewalk every once in a while. So I think we should try a little bit harder. And also about the replacement trees, the removal that I talked about of these street trees, the large ones where we do have 6-foot planting strips, the trees that are replaced are not always small. Can
you just wrap up? You're past the 3 minutes. You can have a little bit more, but can you just wrap up your comment?
Sure. They're not just small trees, but sometimes the species are small. And we should address all of this. This shouldn't just be a one-off. You get a notice, and then 2 days later, a decision is made, and these things are gone. This has been happening for months now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I guess, let's see, commissioner comments. Anyone want to take it away here? It looks like we got a lot to talk about. So Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, I just appreciate the public comment tonight. I just want to say that I feel really uncomfortable that this was city initiated, that there's a lot of public comment opposing this. And also, I mean, I know that Brian, you re-summarized how this was city initiated, but the homeowners were like, great. I don't know that they were great. It sounded like they said that okay, well, maybe if we have to, we understand. So I don't even know that the homeowner themselves is very supportive of this. And also the fact, and this is going to be my sort of theme throughout these, because I actually did have to walk the neighborhood to figure out before this meeting what this situation was like. I did walk this neighborhood, I think this angle, yeah, you can definitely see a little bit of a roller coaster. This is actually probably the worst of all the trees that we're going to see, or all the sidewalks, but it was not potentially a tripping hazard right at the moment. It wasn't like you're going to stumble and fall like some of the other sidewalks in Albany. Not that we want to get it there, but I just want to say that I do think that if we have this taxpayer sidewalk repair, that I don't feel comfortable. And we also have a city tree plan coming up. It's very uncomfortable for me to be recommending these beautiful big canopy trees that clearly the public cares about to be taken out with really no public support. So I just want to, that's my first comment.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Abbott.
So I kind of want to reference some of the questions that came up from the public, and maybe we can talk about those a little bit. We had a question about who looks at kind of the whole area. I can say for myself, I'm always looking at the whole area. So I have pictures of the whole block for here, and I'm not sure what the other commissioners do, but I visit every tree that's on this list and look around and get the feel for it. We are working on, I believe we've talked about a citywide tree inventory, which is a huge task. That is a dream anyway. But I do want to assure that our urban forester / arborist is very much trying to do everything he can to save as many trees as he can. But
you know, it's a conflict with the sidewalks and with all sort of considerations. So, and another point to the public comment is we're seeing all these large trees removed because all these trees, these liquid ambers, were planted in the same era. So they're all kind of coming due now, and they're responding to the drought and all these things. And so it's kind of unfortunate, but we have had lots of problems with liquid ambers, and we continue to have problems with liquid ambers. So one of the reasons we're seeing this happen now is because these trees are there. Another question we had is, who does the bird nest evaluation? Maybe it would be helpful to have a response from that. And just one more point. Again, our arborist is trying to save trees. So usually we only see the trees that are pretty bad. He's usually able to educate and work with the property owners, you know, to not remove their tree if he thinks there's any way we can do it. So usually we only see the bad ones here. That's why we have a high percentage of approval. So anyway, I just hope folks can maybe address perhaps who does the tree evaluation or bird nest evaluation.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Abbott. And I'm realizing probably it would have been better if I'd done this first and asked the staff if, so we'll sort of suspend commissioner comment and just I'll ask, does the staff want to address any of the questions brought up by the members of the public?
Sure. I took down a couple notes here. First of all, as far as looking at the entire area, yes, I do that. But I also need to look at each tree individually. I'm not, you know, the speaker commented about what if there were all the same tree and we're doing sidewalk repair in that area. It would be tree by tree. It wouldn't be, okay, we're repairing the sidewalk, let's clear cut the trees. We don't do that. We do this individually. And as Todd mentioned, you know, you're only seeing the bad trees here. There's many trees that I get many calls about, my tree's dead, it's dying. I go out and look at it, you know, it's got a couple brown leaves. They want it removed because it doesn't match their aesthetic. And, you know, I talk them out of it. So there's that. As far as the roots and the lateral line and city responsibility, what happens, the city is going to pay for the sidewalk repair. The city will pay for the tree removal. The city will pay for tree replacements. The root in the front yard, unfortunately, is the property owner's tree. Technically, this is all the property owner's responsibility, but the city's taking on a lot of this. Also, Jeremiah asked about the bird nest survey, and that would be me. It's not a very in-depth study. I don't climb a 60, 65-foot liquid amber to scout around the crowd, but it's early spring and I can see up in that tree pretty well, and I see no evidence of nesting. I see, you know, occasionally I see birds, but I don't see repeated bird activity in one section of a tree. That's how I would know if there's nesting going on in the tree. What we're really looking for are raptor nests. Occasionally we miss a sparrow nest or something, but I'm pretty sure from what I could see from a ground observation, which is typical, there's no nesting going on, not active nesting in the trees. Let's see, creative sidewalk replacement. I'm all for that, actually. If I could save these trees, if we could save these trees, you know, well, let me step back. With a liquid amber, my concern is also the limb drop on these things. It's not just the sidewalk damage. If it were a different species damaging the sidewalk and we could save that tree by building up a ramped sidewalk or something, I'm all for that. But I think that's a little cost prohibitive for the city and for the taxpayers who are ultimately footing the bill for this. We've talked about alternative sidewalk materials, rubber sidewalks and this sort of thing, and they're all experimental. They're not really something that the city is willing to install. And once the sidewalk is repaired, it all goes back to the property owner again. So we can't say, here's this maybe good fix, maybe not a good fix, but now it's your responsibility. You know, the city's not prepared to do that. We're there to do sidewalk repair, replace concrete, the same for each property owner. We try to treat everyone the same way. Let's see. The size of the replacement trees, yeah, some of them are small. It all depends on what we're getting from the nursery. We have a contractor that purchases. They order from the nursery. They purchase. We've got a lot of nice trees, a lot of big trees this year, but it depends on the species, the availability. Sometimes the more popular trees, they're smaller because they're getting bought up. There's not so many, larger specimens in the nursery. So, but one thing I'd say to that point is that we plant 15-gallon size nursery trees. So they're grown in a 15-gallon pot. A 24-inch, it's basically a crate, a box tree, is a little. For one thing, it's way more expensive than a 15-gallon, but it's also very difficult to plant the tree. It takes cranes and things. It's not that easy to do. Also, the 15-gallon is considered the perfect size for planting a sapling because it's small enough to where it can acclimate itself to the native soils and the local conditions. So we're going to stick with 15-gallon size trees, and we hope we get better size species, better size specimens, but we kind of get what's available. As far as the species, yes, some of them are very small species, and I'm always trying to talk property owners into going with a larger species. Fill the space. There's a space, this space here, I'm not gonna, if they said, can we put in some Ray Hartman ceanothus? That's an 8-foot tall, basically a shrub that you limb up to make it into a tree. I'm gonna say, no, this is not the right tree. You want something to fill this space. But that's what I get. A lot of property owners want the cherry tree or the Ray Hartman or whatever the smallest tree is, because it's easier to take care of. There's less leaves to rake up, all of that stuff. So I do encourage larger trees, larger size tree species. The notification, the notifications were taped to the tree so that people walking on the sidewalk can see them. My feeling was if you're driving by in a car, you see a piece of paper on a tree, that doesn't do much good. People walking by can actually see it and read it and see what it is. And not only that, but it will be the people who frequent that area, who live on that block, who live in that neighborhood, that walk by that house. They can see the notification and read it and know what it's about. And all the information is there about the meeting, about where to find more information about the meeting. As well, mailers go out with basically the same information to neighbors within 150-foot radius, which is what's required by our policy. I think the idea behind that is that people within that area have more of a financial part of this situation if we're removing trees, or even the aesthetic or whatever, the entire thing about having trees there. That and it goes out, with the notice for the meeting. That's the notification. Some people pay attention, some people don't. Could it be done better? I suppose it could, but that's been our process since I've been here, and as far as I understand, my predecessor did the same. So let's see, large tree removal, take risk. Again, we do try to, a lot of trees, I say, let's just do the root pruning. We've done a couple this year. We did a large maple on Portland, was it maybe, where there was just immense roots. And I worked with the contractor to do the least harmful approach to getting the roots to where they can replace the sidewalk. And they tried one method. They say, it's still no good. They're showing me the lines, they're measuring, they're showing me the slope that the sidewalk has to be. I say, okay, well then try this. You can cut this root too. Just, do it properly, do a nice cut. That didn't work. Finally, they had to get a grinder in there and grind this huge root mass out. So step by step, we worked with them. I'm still worried about the tree. It's a beautiful maple tree. It's planted in a spot, in a strip that's a little too small for it. but it's a mature maple tree, and hopefully the tree will survive, but I'm skeptical about its survival, but we'll see over the next year or two. We have lost a couple trees where sidewalk work was done, not necessarily by the city, but by the property owner. I think last year we had a large camphor, beautiful, perfect shaped camphor that just lost all its leaves, and that was it. It had to come out. So when we're doing work with, again, liquid amber, it's just, it keeps me up at night too often when I think about these trees during windstorms in the summer when the leaf growth is full and the trees are drying out and they're getting stressed and they're starting to drop limbs, both in the summer and in the winter. I'm more worried about people being hurt from these things. Property damage too, that can be fixed, but people being injured is another thing. And if we take out one of these trees or leave them both and do the root pruning, we're setting these trees up for complete failure for a 60-foot tree to fall across Santa Fe, which is a pretty busy street here as well. Even if if it isn't complete tree failure, there's limb drop, and stressing these trees out just makes them drop more limbs. And it seems that once they start to drop large limbs, they just keep doing it on a regular and more frequent basis.
Okay, John, I think that probably a pretty good job answering. Was there anything else we didn't cover there?
I think that's about it. Yeah.
Mark Cooley wants to comment.
Well, actually, I wanted to provide some context on the overall program, and I'm just seeing if so James is here too, and he'll provide some context. But I wanted to provide some overall sort of numbers, and I think Commissioner Abbott did point out that we only see the ones that are the worst offenders in this context. And just for overall, we've done through the first 0 to 4 phases that we've completed in the sidewalk program. We've done about 256 locations. Let's call it 250, 260, somewhere in there. And we've only brought a handful of locations to the commission for removal. So we don't do this unless we really think that this is needed to correct the conflict between the sidewalk and the tree, because that's sort of the underlying issue with the program, that we want to have a sidewalk that'll be stable and last. And then for context on this one, on this phase, we have about 50 locations total. 42 of them involve tree conflicts, and of that, we're only bringing 3 within at 2 locations to the commission for removal. So it is something that we work with in the design. And we've updated our sidewalk standards to make it now a standard to do the arcing and provide more space for tree wells. So we're doing all the things, and then we work very closely with the contractor. So just kind of giving some of those big picture context. And so James might give some context on kind of the creative approach to sidewalks and some of the challenges there.
Good evening. So I can talk a bit on that. So when there's tree conflicts, we do not go immediately to trying to remove the tree. We really do look at a design, typically with an arch sidewalk, that would allow for the tree to remain in place and to have an ADA accessible sidewalk that will stay in good shape for the foreseeable future. This location in particular, we've done a comprehensive survey. That's what the repair locations are based off of, and it has a lens to accessibility. And they've more or less told us the critical repair locations that are accessibility issues in the city, and this is one of them, as all the Phase 5 repair locations. And we would have a lot of issues repairing this sidewalk and bringing it into ADA compliance if we were to do anything more creative than what's already been done here. You can see it's a roller coaster, and we don't really have any way of putting the sidewalk back in place that wouldn't create non-accessible conditions in a pretty quick timeline with these 2 types of trees at this particular location. I know one of the comments we're talking in particular about putting, creative repairs. One of the issues, again, we have is ADA accessibility, and that isn't just necessarily needs to be flat. It also pertains to slope, which, you know, to some users isn't as easily perceptive. There's also costs and responsibility. A creative solution can get very expensive very quickly, and we have, you know, due diligence with this parcel tax with its limited funding available to make sure that we're installing these cost effectively. We don't want to spend 3 to 4 times the cost at a certain location, and that might end up eating 2 to 3 repairs we could do at other locations. And at the end, when we do these repairs, we give, you know, the responsibility at the end. We give a certificate of compliance to the homeowner saying, this is your responsibility to maintain. That's current city and state law. And for this location, they have been doing due diligence and repairing the sidewalks, and they have failed twice. And for us to put this sidewalk in and have it fail again, we're basically giving them a compliance saying, we're okay, you know, this is a compliant sidewalk, but we know internally that this sidewalk is probably going to fail in the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Is that all from the staff, or are we ready to go up back to commissioner comments? Okay. Okay, Commissioner Chang Feng.
Thank you. Thanks for the staff answers. And I understand that there's, you know, clearly a conflict with sidewalks and trees, but sometimes I feel like we're just like a tree. We're always thinking about sidewalks, and I feel like that's not what I signed up for, you know, as a parks commissioner. I do have to say that there's twice been a note of financial that we could do that, but that would be expensive. You know, I think John mentioned something about how, you know, you could do something where you trim the tree. I don't remember what it was, but it was some note about how costly that would be. And I just heard from James that also it would be too costly to do certain sidewalk modifications. But I do want to just recognize that these trees too have a significant, if you were to try to, you know, monetize their value because of their canopy, are much of, I think, of greater public value. And there's actually, you know, I think there's a quantification of the amount a tree fronting your property increases the value of your home. So I don't think that's a great excuse, you know, just sort of the financial sort of reasoning, because if it was, then we should also incorporate the cost of taking down a tree that's, you know, 75 plus years old and creates canopy and, you know, sequesters carbon. So I just want to make that note as we think about what we're going to do with this tree.
Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, I appreciate the staff comments and the public comments. We have seen a number of liquid ambers before. The staff has, you know, made it explained again that these things are all becoming to a certain stage of life at the same time, and so people are seeing a lot of these things being removed all at the same time. And I do appreciate, it sounds like the city has been dealing with a lot of trees without requesting removal during the sidewalk repair program, and we're just seeing a handful every year, many of them being liquid amber. I think the pictures, as much as I wish they'd been in the packet to begin with, it's very clear to me that, especially with the history at this site, that not only are they tearing up the sidewalk and the curb, but it looks like 2 adjacent driveways are being torn up, and it sounds like it's anything that could be done to, you know, address those would be very bad for the trees in the long term or the near term. So if there is no more comment, I would make a motion to approve.
We haven't finished commissioner comment yet.
Oh, okay. Let me know when that is. Thank you.
Are there more commissioner comments? Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I will have comments at the end, but go ahead again.
Yeah, I would, before we make motions, I would just say I did walk this area, and well, I'm not an arborist, but just from the look of the tree on the street, on the sidewalk, it appeared to be very healthy. So it's surprising to me to hear about all these, sort of signs of it being in poor health, because to my eye, it looked, both the trees look very healthy.
Commissioner Abbott.
Yeah, I made kind of the suggestion earlier that I would try to save the northern tree, the smaller one. But then the point has been made that, a lone tall tree like that without any kind of neighbors is exposed to forces, likely in excess of what it could handle. So that's one thing that is kind of turning me towards just approving the application as is. I'm also curious, and I think, John, you expressed some kind of confusion, why so much trimming was done, so much just blunt, cuts off the ends of the limbs, because it's not near, really, it doesn't seem like it's interfering with power lines, certainly nothing high voltage that's on this other side of the street. So I just wonder how much damage you think has been done to these trees by that sort of, poor pruning, I suppose. And is that one of the factors you're having in mind when you talk about kind of the health of these trees and longevity of these trees?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure power why this is done, but I know when you take a telephone number off a power pole that says they're going to top your tree or prune your tree, and they show up with a pickup truck and some tools, that's more than likely what you're going to get. These are wounds in the crown of the tree. Over time, this could be fixed. You'd have to have an arborist go up to the tip of every limb and choose the strongest new sprout that's coming out and prune it and keep an eye on it. And over time, it could get back to a normal shape and direction that the tree was headed in originally. But again, that's who's going to do that. We don't really do that. The property owners aren't going to do that. The property owners, in this case, I'll talk to Julia's comment. They weren't overexcited about removing these. They were sad to see them go, but they understood, and they were a little bit on the relief side about these trees because they told us they had dropped some limbs in the past, and those spiky seed capsules that come down, people slide on them and all that. So as far as the tipping, topping, tipping, stubbing cuts, it's more damage to the tree. It's a place where infection can enter, decay can enter into that part of the limb, which makes it liable, good candidate for limb failure.
Okay. Did you have more, Commissioner?
I did. I just a couple more points. One is, you can see it in this picture that's showing right now how much this shades the house. I wonder if the property owners understand how much warmer their house is going to be when these trees are removed. And the other thing is something I think perhaps John and maybe even Tony before him said is that yes, we might be losing these trees, but what we're doing is we're starting the replacement sooner rather than later. These trees might be able to stick around for another 5 or 10 years, but they will eventually go away. They're causing problems, and if we remove them now, then we're 10 years ahead of that replacement process. So that's kind of how I look at some of these situations where these problem trees that you might be able to save, but you're probably going to give them 5 or 10 years, and that's 5 or 10 years that you could be growing the replacement. That's the end of my comments. Thanks.
Commissioner Armendariz.
Hi. Thanks, staff, for addressing all of the public comment questions and our questions. It does make me sad to lose a big tree. I know I've only been on the commission for a year and a little over a year, and have heard already lots and lots about these liquid amber trees. And I guess my concern is like some of the comments, the commenters talking about the newly planted trees and how many big trees will we have in time. And I know that the census is kind of coming and in the future for the whole city, but I wonder if maybe if not now, in a future meeting, we can hear about the new 184 trees that were planted. Of those, how many will be 50-foot trees, 20-foot trees, et cetera, to get an understanding of the variety of things that are being planted. And I would like to have some assurance that the city is going to continue to have big trees where it makes sense, obviously. But I appreciate the comments that you made about the concern for the damage that could be done to property and also to people. So I would be in favor of removing the trees for those reasons.
Other commissioners? Okay, I'll give my comments now. Very educational meeting. Particularly, it's great to hear so much public engagement in this process. Just kind of an overall guiding principle that I heard when I saw the videos about being a commissioner was that we have to serve the whole city. So we've got to weigh these different interests. And just on the note of process about, was there the notice? I think there's one thing that's come out of this meeting is a greater need for notice and to study this process. But we can't allow that to color our decision today because this is the process. The legal process for tree removal was followed. We need to follow that process, but that doesn't mean we can't strive toward a better process. And clearly there is a need for one. I did want to speak to particularly Mr. Frank's comments that I do can appreciate, as a past homeowner myself, that you buy a home with the assumption that the character is like it is and you think it's going to be that way forever. There's a lot of change goes on, and I think it's particularly hitting this neighborhood because of these particular trees. And I personally, I've had experience with one of these trees. I had a home in Concord where this tree was planted directly on top of the sewer line. I was calling the sewer company every 6 months, and it became the theory in town was that it was a conspiracy, that the city had planted these trees in cahoots with the sewer. Anyway, I would have trouble sleeping at night in this house because I'd be afraid someone's going to sue us. And I think really the overwhelming concern, the community's spoken. We need safe sidewalks in the city. We need to comply with the ADA requirements. We can't just say we're going to do a half-assed job. If we're going to repair that sidewalk, we have to do it right. And this homeowner's already paid tens of thousands of dollars, probably. It's expensive to repair sidewalks. So I'm going to urge my commissioners to approve this. But I'll wait for whoever it is to make a motion. So those are my comments. And I'll await a motion. Commissioner Martin?
I move that we approve the application.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Can we, sorry, I keep muting myself. Can we have a roll call vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
No.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal?
Yes. Okay, the application carries. So let's move on to the next tree.
We're getting there.
Where is my tree gone?
Okay, well, the next one is really informational only. There's a Mexican fan palm that's been planted in the planter box next to the side exit for the meeting room at City Hall. I don't know who put it there or why. Maybe it was a cute little thing when it was planted, and this is what it's become. It's pushing on the drain, the rain gutter. It's pushing on the eaves. It's up against the building. It's starting to push out the planter box itself. It's already knocked this pipe off of the rain gutter.
So John, in the interest in time, I guess, since we're not going to vote on this, I would say, okay, make this as quick as possible.
Well, I'll do a quick history. Yeah. Here it is. A couple years later, and today. So we need to take it out. It won't be replaced. We can't plant the tree in that spot. So good enough.
Okay, so there's no decision to be made by the commission. Oh, you're still going. Okay, keep going.
No, I'm just going back in case there's comment.
Is this a case where we would take comment? Oh, Commissioner Martin has a comment. Okay.
Yeah, very quick question. Is there any possibility of since it's in a planter of like pulling it out and putting it somewhere else? Is it a species we want to preserve somewhere, or would it?
It's a low value palm. I've been asked this question over my career many times about the fan palms. They're really common, low value, and I don't think it would be easy to pull this out of that where, it's cornered. It's in the corner of the building and in the planter box there. So,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Is this a case where do we take public comment on these? Help me out, staff. Or, yeah, okay, I guess so. Jeremiah, we'll let him in. Yep. Yeah, Jeremiah, you can speak. Just keep in mind, we're not making a decision on this.
So when this tree gets removed eventually, can it be wood chipped? And then the public can come and get free wood chips?
No, it's not really. It's in the grass family. Palm trees are in the grass family. The stem is very fibrous and wet. There's not really wood chips from this thing. They section it and they just take the sections away. If you leave it to dry, it shrivels up and it becomes this kind of fibrous little shriveled. No, it's the answer. It's not good for wood chips.
Can we make palm oil out of it? I understand Girl Scout cookies are made of palm oil, and they want to boycott them because they're like there's plantations down in South America.
Different palm tree.
Did you have anything else you want to say, Jeremiah? Sorry, you got 2 minutes. Okay,
that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess let's move on to the actual. This one, there's no decision for the committee, and it's getting late. So let's try to, I guess, what's the next tree?
The next one, 1350 Washington. Another liquid amber. There's some sidewalk damage. There's history of limb failure on this tree that I'm aware of. It's been repeatedly topped for the high voltage power lines that run overhead. Has poor limb structure, low branch to stem ratio. As you can see in these pictures, you can see that the top growth is kind of bizarre because it's been topped there. What looks like nests there are either bunches of leaves or more than likely squirrel nests. That's not a bird nest in this tree. Let's see, this limb, if you look on the right side picture, is no longer there because that one came down last year. This other limb broke the year before. Here you can see where these two stems are grown really close together. This is a situation that sets up more than likely this outside limb for failure. And in which case, if this limb were to fail, it would probably hit the house here. You can see on this one, the fresh cut where the one limb was removed. And there's some other little knobs here and there where limbs were removed over time because of limb failure. There was one a couple years ago towards the corner. This was this past year. This limb, I believe, is gone also now. I'm not sure why I had that error. I think that that limb is the one that failed this year or last, couldn't be last year, this year. This is looking up into the tree where it's been topped under the power lines. You could see some bad branching unions here down below. This one's more of a concern. It's a large extended branch with a tight branching union. The main concern are really not so much limbs, these stems, these three stems of the tree, where there's really tight branching going on here. You could see what looks like could be the beginning of cracking there. This is from looking in the other direction. Again, the broken limb. Oh, that's the one that I didn't know what. I think the other picture was an older picture. This is an older picture too. There's a cut from a limb that broke and was cut at that point to clear it. It's close up. You can see that the wound, the scar tissue isn't fully developed here. It's kind of not really healing over that quickly. And here's an older cut where there's decay. You could visibly see the rotted wood right there. There's scar tissue there, but there is decay, and it's hard to say how far into this tree this decay is gone, but it is there. And then this one again, you can see that's the area where the limb has decay, where the wound hasn't healed correctly. Pushing on some communications wire, not a major issue, but that's there. Here it looks like cracking again with this big stem that would most likely hit the house if this were to break out. Let's see some more. Again, this is kind of included bark here where these two sections, I believe it's the other side of the top arrow on the right, where these are growing together, and as the tree grows, it expands in girth and it starts pushing itself away from itself. So that's how we get this major limb failure on a tree like this. And then there's sidewalk damage. There's going to be sidewalk work done here, but I think I'm not sure when this is, but it's in this phase, this property. There's lifting up and down this block, but for this tree, right adjacent to the tree, going straight out to the left from the tree is kind of a hump, a peak there. It arches up a little bit, not too bad. There is some subduction here where there's about a 2-inch drop. I think I have a closer shot of that. Let's see, just pointing out some of the sidewalk issues. I guess where the yellow tape is where there's some tripping. This section has sunk down, subsided, and there has been a little bit of shaving next to that too for the part that was lifted next to it. And down at the bottom, you could see the kind of peak of the hump, the arrow pointing to the stem of the tree. A little bit of gutter damage starting to occur from this tree. And another issue with this tree is that, well, a couple of things. It's on a corner, which means there's more activity. There's more vehicle activity here if one of these limbs were to break out. And also, I believe in the fall, there's plans for ADA curb installation here, which is going to require more root pruning from the tree, aside from the root pruning that will be done for the regular part of the sidewalk. So again, some cuts, that limb is no longer there. Also, this tree was planted too close to a stop sign. This line indicates approximately 25 feet. So a replacement tree would go right about there at the end of this line. We did, oops, I guess that's it. Last year, we did remove another tree from this property, which again was dropping huge limbs. One of them landed in the front yard of this property, and that tree was removed and it was replaced with a red horsenut tree, which is a medium-sized tree that's suitable for under power lines, and it's more probably what we would do here. I spoke to the property owner about it. She's happy with removing this tree and would be happy with another red horse nut tree as replacement tree. So this tree, in my opinion, qualifies for removal, non-emergency city tree removal per criteria 21B and 21D. So that's about it. Any comments, questions?
Questions from commissioners? I did have one question I'll throw out there. It sort of stems from our experience with the previous tree we talked about on Santa Fe, where one tree, there was a pair of trees, and there were two equal trees were planted together, but one was south of the other, and so it blocked the sun. And here in Washington, we've got an east-west arrangement. So again, we're going to tend to see, it's going to be different, but it's going to tend to be the one tree is going to block the morning sun, the other ones. So is there something we can do when it comes to the replacement trees to make it so that they're maybe the one that's on the sunny side is shorter or something? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a thought. It often will depend on the property owner's preference, what type of tree they want and where. In this location, it's not really an issue. And I went back to this picture. You could see above the top arrow, there is another liquid amber there that is lifting the sidewalk, but I don't think this tree was in as bad condition. And this tree has some more years left to it. I think we can do the root pruning. The tree's not as large. It doesn't have any history of limb failure as this tree does. And the previous one where the barricades are, that's where the stump was, and the new tree is now planted. So there were three in a line here. The middle one was the smallest here for some reason. But the middle one will remain for now anyway.
Yeah, that sort of, I'm sorry, raises another question then. So it seems like then we're leaving one tree in one spot on the sidewalk that would have to be repaired in a subsequent year, or do we expect the sidewalks that once we're done here, we're done for a while?
Well, I think eventually there's going to be problems with the sidewalk here again. But looking at the tree from the tree's standpoint, it's not, doesn't have the same issues as the other two trees, this tree and the old tree had. So it's a smaller tree. We could do more root pruning. We'll have curved the sidewalk out to give it some space. And it's not a very tall tree where it's at risk of toppling as the other two trees were. So yeah, basically, because it's a smaller tree, we're wanting to leave this one in place.
And I'm just almost thinking this fits into some of the public comment about an overall. I think, we'll have to address this as a subsequent meeting, but it seems like the public's looking for some kind of overall process. And just looking down this sidewalk, I'm kind of, the accountant in me is kind of scratching my head saying, yeah, are we going to be back here 5 years from now? But anyway, I think that's for another day. So any other commissioner comments? Okay, let's see. Looks like we've got three members of the public want to comment. Can we let them in?
Oh, hey everyone, it's Becca Black again. Okay, so this tree is right on our corner. So this tree is why I'm here. I definitely see the problems with it. As I said, I completely understand the issues with liquid ambers. We have one in our backyard, and it's just that family member that you have to deal with, right? So if you look at this photograph, if you see the peak of the house, to the left side of the photograph, there's like a large peak of a house. Right there, homeowners removed two, I think they were liquid ambers last year. I know their son, so I called their son to talk to him about it and see if there was anything we could do to keep those trees. The homeowners are older, and the son told me, he's a friend of mine, said, you know, they're old, they're tired of picking up the leaves. They've repaired the sidewalk a couple of times. They don't want to deal with the insurance. You know, it's a liability issue. They just want the trees gone. Okay, so that's, you know, pretty sad. If you look to the other side of the street where there's the white car on the left side, actually the right side of this photograph, right at that corner, those homeowners removed 2 camphor trees about 3 months ago. So that's 4 trees in about 18 months that have completely changed the character of the neighborhood. Now, I understand we need to plant the right kinds of trees. I understand that liquid ambers were a big mistake 80 years ago. What I think the public is looking for is the gestalt of this area, especially this particular part of Albany. Like, how can we go and look at every single tree and say, maybe this tree should be removed that we're talking about today, but maybe those 2 previous trees right at the peaked house should have stayed. And I don't think we have any sort of process around that. It's extremely, it's disheartening. And I guess I was thinking about what Chair Beal said about the accountant and him wanting to, not have to come back to this problem in 5 years. And I guess I have the opposite reaction as former City of Albany Poet Laureate. The poet in me says, oh, let's get another 5 years out of this poor tree and see if we can't, figure out shade, plant things around trees that we know we might have to remove in the future. I completely understand there's limited time and resources. But this is really, really changing the character of the neighborhood for the worse. And we need to address these liquid ambers differently. I'm not sure, obviously I'm not a professional, but I need something different besides like, we have to remove them always. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Jeremiah.
Yeah, before Jeremiah goes, Chair Beal, we need to entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's 10 o'clock.
I'll move that we extend the meeting.
To 10:30?
Sure, to 10:30.
Is there a second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but I won't be upset if we finish before 10:30.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a roll call?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yeah.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal?
Yes. Thank you for that point, Isabel. I wasn't sure if it was 10 or 10:30 that we had to. I think the city council has a different rule or something. But so where are we? We're on public comment. Jeremiah.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I have 4 questions, and I think they're good questions. Number 1, is a fire truck able to park in that red parking space without running into a low branch? Number 2, I have a great idea because, I'm not into arguing with people, but I do have a conflicted viewpoint with the arborist about these bird nests. Okay, it's a group of leaves, but to me, how do you know there's not an egg or a nest on top? Because you can only see from the bottom. So my question is it possible someday to get a drone with a camera to where you could fly it up and take some aerial footages of a, oh my gosh, a bird's eye view? I'm sorry, that just came out naturally. Perfect. Okay, so is it possible to get a drone to have a bird's eye view That way we can have photos from every single top of every single tree to be removed during this process, because we're getting side views, but we never get a bird's eye view. And I think it'd be great to get a bird's eye view from a drone. Boy, I think I forgot my other questions here, but hold on one second. So the fire truck, the drone, and
parades. You still with us, Jeremiah?
yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Our next, Aaron Frank.
Hi, yeah. This is the tree I came here for tonight as well. First, I just have to say again about the public comment. I mean, at the very beginning of this call, y'all considered pushing these off for 30 days because the notice wasn't great. I live across the street from this tree, and you just can't see the notice. It's just impossible to see. I must have walked by it, at least 30 times in the last 30 days. You just can't see it. So maybe it's illegal, but I think you should have a responsibility to the neighbors just to make sure that people know about it. I know that there are a lot of neighbors that have no idea about this. That's number one. Number two, the photos that were used tonight they're not current. Some of them were from Google, like Google Earth or Google Street View, but many of them were from the winter. And the tree, there were many pictures of the tree, and I have a photo of the tree that I took today on my computer, and they look very different. So a lot of those arrows and things you were pointing at, even Mr. Hawkridge, you were saying, oh, well, that's an old photo, that limb's not here anymore. A lot of that stuff none of it made any sense because you were pointing to a tree that is completely different. Number three, the first picture you showed where you said these are not birds' nests, these are squirrels' nests, that was a winter tree. I have seen active nests in this tree lately. And I don't think you can do anything with this tree with active nests. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act, that would be a violation. I would ask at least for the commissioners to push this one off till the next meeting. I think I'd love to have neighbors actually know that this was on the agenda. I'd like to have John come out. I can show him the bird's nest. And on top of it, there's really not a problem with the sidewalk. I mean, it's an old sidewalk and you showed a couple cracks, but it is a pretty flat landing, and it's going to be repaired anyway. And so this is one of those situations where, there are a couple arrows saying these branches are kind of close together, and in the future there may be some problem. But this is exactly the sort of situation where when we have to take down a tree, like the other ones that we've seen tonight, because they're real problems, then it's a shame we have to do it. Here, we don't have sidewalk problems. We don't have any real urgent problems. And the pictures that we saw were just not, they're just not right.
Aaron, you're just passing your 3 minutes. Can you, I guess, give us a summary?
Okay, I think that's what I had to say, but there is an active nest in that tree.
Okay. Okay, that's all for the public comment. And I kind of want to throw out this one question, and then we'll go to commissioner comment. But again, to the staff, do we feel that, I'm essentially asking the same question I asked for the last tree. Was the proper legal notice given for this tree? And second question is, are we confident there's no bird's nest in the tree?
Notice was the same for all the trees tonight.
So legal notice was given. And are we confident there's no bird's nest?
Well, I can't say 100% accuracy. When I looked at the tree, my notes, in February, I was there looking at this tree. No bird's nest that I acknowledged. If there is one, we can put this off until the end part of August for removal if we need to. Another part of this monitoring for bird nests, though, is when the tree workers are there to monitor when they're up in a boom and before they start work or as they're working. If they notice something, they need to back off. That's part of their responsibility as well. They need to stop.
Okay.
When there's a bird's nest and put the work off until.
So in other words, if there's a bird's nest today, or whether there's a bird's nest today or not, if we approve the application and you go to cut the tree down, and you look up and there's a bird's nest, you're not going to cut the tree down? Is that?
Yeah, we would need to stop.
Okay. I think that satisfies my concern. Commissioner Abbott?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So first off, I do have some pictures from today if we want to put them up, but I'm not sure that's going to really change much. But I just want to say that this tree scares me. From what I know of liquid amber, from what I know the shape this tree is supposed to be, this is scary. The leverage on those branches that you're pointing out as having included bark and the like is frightening. When you think about a liquid amber, it's supposed to be the shape of the trees we were looking at before. It's a nice kind of narrow, it goes up and there's a peak. This one goes up halfway and just cuts across and it's growing out. And the leverage on those limbs is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And so this one actually scared me when I looked at it and realized what I saw happening. And that's from PG&E trimming it because of the power lines. That's why this one is suffering the way it is because PG&E has had to cut it off so many times. It's going out rather than up. And that is not something that a liquid amber wants to do. So I'm just going to make that point.
Any other commissioners? Yeah, I guess I just wanted to respond that to the public comment that, yeah, I see that from the residents' perspective, there's a need to preserve the quality of these neighborhoods. But then the city, we've got this process, and we've got a movement in the city to get these sidewalks repaired. And it's a one tree by one tree process. And I think that's sort of a little bit, it looks non-optimal because to a resident, because all those tree removals are going to tend to fall on one place, and there's going to be a lot of change at once. So with that, do we all entertain a motion? Approve, deny, push off the next meeting, any of those three?
I would move that we remove it, we approve the application just because I think it's a dangerous tree. But I would also think wouldn't be inappropriate to push it off to the next meeting if people feel like not enough neighbors were aware. I do think perhaps for when we get to the future agenda items, I think maybe it's time to revisit the notification standards because I think more could be done without.
Definitely. But I'm looking for a motion on the tree. I'm looking for a definite motion.
So I'm going to move that we approve, but if somebody wants to, if it's not going to get a second or whatever,
can't do it that way.
Brian, I'm perfectly able to say I'm going to make a motion, and if nobody seconds it, then it dies, and I'm just going to put that out there. So I'm moving that we approve this application.
Okay, I thought you were moving. If no one else, okay, you understand. And sorry. Okay, does anyone second the application or the approval of the application?
I second it.
Okay. So can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank? She's recused?
I'm recusing myself.
Thank you. Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal?
Yes. Okay. All right. So we've got 20 minutes left, and what? Two more trees?
Locations.
What's the next tree?
Okay, next one. Oh, one more location. 1435 Thousand Oaks. This one's a camphor tree where there's going to be sidewalk repair done by the city, and there's extensive sidewalk damage. Basically, you have a camphor tree which can have a 6 to 8 to 10 foot root flare in a 27-inch planting strip. There has been previous sidewalk repair. There was a cutaway made to give the tree more room to grow, and the tree did grow. Root pruning will be, this is the property, but these aren't the trees. The tree is at the back of the property. And this is the tree here. You could see from this angle at the bottom, you could see how the sidewalk is lifted about 18 inches at the peak of the lift there. This is looking towards Washington. You can see major lift on the sidewalk. You can also see where the root flare is extended into the sidewalk area. If we were to do some root pruning on this, we'd basically be cutting into the trunk of the tree. We'd be cutting a big wound into the side of the tree, which would kill the tree. We looked at this. We considered all the alternatives we could think of. I believe even if the tree gets approved for removal, the sidewalk will be arced back a little bit, but there's not a lot of space to go. And we're going to have to remove some of the property owner's plants. I believe clematis they have growing along the fence there. Also, well, on this picture too, you could see the water meter is lifted. I believe this is the neighbor's water meter. Major lifting of the sidewalk. You can see how the curb has been pushed out a little bit from the tree. Curb is lifted here. This vault, I think it's an AT&T vault, is sort of at an angle. It's being pushed over a little bit from the tree. Again, this is the curb, and the sidewalk's got a little lift from the roots of this tree. You can see how there was repair. They did try to give the tree some more room, but it just continued to grow and expand, as camphors unfortunately do. And it would be great to save this tree because it is a camphor. Doesn't have the brittleness of a liquid amber tree where it's going to drop large limbs unexpectedly or more frequently because of damage to the roots. But it's, again, this is a 27-inch planting strip where this tree should never have been planted. Let's see. Again, just an overview. There's been some patching and grinding and this and that. That's not really held on this tree. So just looking up into the tree, it's a little sparse, but most of our camphors are a little sparse right now. I think these also have been planted 50, 60 years ago, all at the same time. They're all getting to the point. And after years of drought and continued foreseeable drought into the foreseeable future, these trees are struggling. So again, my recommendation on this, based on tree removal criteria 21C and 21D, is to remove it and replace it with something more suitable for this location.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Abbott.
You know, I think I've asked this before in other trees, but is it possible to push the curb out into the street a little bit? Could you put like a foot that way to make more room for this tree? And would that work? Maybe it wouldn't even work.
The tree is doing that already.
Well, what if we give it an extra room?
That wouldn't be my call, but I mean, there are cases and instances like this where we've lived with this for who knows how many years, where it's been pushed out. James, maybe want to?
Actually, I can jump in on that. We actually did something. We did bend out the curve on the Washington project that we just completed around a tree. So we do look at things like that where we can do it. And maybe James has some more information why this wouldn't work necessarily here. And I think it has to do with how much grinding we would have to do on the sidewalk side of the tree that would damage it.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate the same example. We just did that on Washington. This is such a large diameter tree that it's not as feasible here, especially if we are considering the sidewalk on the Washington example was able to be repaired and ramped properly. This situation, we wouldn't be able to do that. So we don't have we have a sidewalk constraint that the tree. We still have the sidewalk constraint even if we were to give it some room in the street.
Other commissioners. Let's see. Okay, so we have one member of the public wants to comment. Jeremiah.
Okay, so I was wondering what the municipal code is regarding sidewalks and clearance. I was thinking it was like 7 feet tall, straight up from the sidewalks. I forget the clearance, but it looks to me that one of the branches is kind of going into the airspace of the sidewalk. You know, out of all the trees, I don't like removing trees, but of all the ones in this meeting, I would probably approve this one because it just kind of is in the way a lot. It's causing a lot of sidewalk damage, and the water meter's right there. So I'm concerned about the lateral line and, you know, issues regarding that, of course. And it looks like right there on the street in the gutter, the roots are pushing up the ground so much, it looks like when it rains, it can actually cause standing water. You know, mosquitoes could grow right there. Also, in this photo that you're showing, I don't see the arborist's notice. And I'm wondering why none of these photos have the arborist notice in the pictures. I would think that every single photo would show the notice as proof and evidence that the notice was displayed. And I haven't seen the notice in any of these photos. So that's one of my questions and concerns. That when was this photo taken? Was it taken in February, 3 months ago? So it's kind of outdated and I don't see the sign. The sidewalk is really messed up. I don't see how a wheelchair can get through there, or a handicapped person with a walking problem using a cane. It seems like a really big tripping hazard, and I'm concerned about the safety of our community members. I don't like cutting trees down. And so I was wondering, the last question is this the type of tree that could be turned into wood chips? Thank you. That's it.
Becca Black, and then we'll let the staff respond to the questions afterwards. Becca.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, just quickly. I mean, this is the 4th tree in my immediate neighborhood that's going to be potentially voted to be removed. That brings the total to about 8 in the past 18 months. I don't think this process is looking at the gestalt for the neighborhood. And I completely understand the physical arboreal challenges and the city's responsibility to repair the sidewalks. But this is just, I'm losing faith in our process. I'm learning about it. But this is very disturbing. And I think it's going to be disturbing to a lot of people. We need to address this differently and come up with better, more creative solutions. We have a lot of liquid ambers, and they're super problematic, and they're at the end of their lifespan. So we have to be smarter and more creative. The community wants us to work harder to address the trees that we have, working with them, preemptively planting around trees that are going to be removed. Yeah, we have to do a better job. Thank you.
Okay, does the staff want to address any of the questions brought up?
Sure. Jeremiah mentioned this, the clearance. I think in this photo particularly, that's not the tree, that's actually the clematis vines that are growing over. And James and I did talk to the property owner about these and let them know that they need to prune them back, and some of them will need to be removed for this project. So there's that. The notices aren't in the pictures because just this picture is from February, and I post the notices at least 15 days previous. So I don't post the notice too far in advance. I post them actually 16 days before the meeting. So the notice won't be there, but in the future, I can take pictures and try to include them in my presentations. And as far as this being made wood chips, certainly. The camphor tree, some people are kind of allergic to it. The camphor oil is actually camphor, like camphophenique, the cold, whatever, like in Vicks vapor or whatever like that. And it can be irritating to some people, but when we remove trees that are really trees, we have the contract that chips them, and we leave them for residents in Ocean View Park. For Becca's comments, part of the problem is you have a uniform age urban forest here. You have a lot of trees that were planted at the same time. And as you mentioned, they're mature, they're getting to the end of that stage. And in an urban setting, you don't allow, you have to cycle trees out. You have, when a tree gets to a certain stage, you take it out, you start over again. And by looking at each tree individually and taking out the ones that need to be taken out now, hopefully we're producing a more staggered aged forest, urban forest. But, you know, in a forest, yes, in a woodland, you can allow a tree, woodland that's not a park where there's a lot of people passing through, you can let a tree live out its life to old age and fall apart little by little and eventually topple over and decay in place. But in an urban setting, it's a different situation where I wouldn't look at this as detrimental. Well, you know, it's harmful to see a tree, a mature tree being taken out, but it's something that it's part of a process, and there'll be a new tree planted, and it's a new beginning for the next generation. There'll be mature trees, hopefully more suitable trees for the locations in place. Preemptive planting is a great idea, but we need buy-in from the property owners. We also need the space to plant these trees. A lot of properties have a tree, there's only room for that one tree. Some places there are, and it's something that I can look into, we can look into. I can't really say we've done much of this, but it's something that we can do in the future. And I think that's all I have.
Thanks, John. Now, before we go on to the commissioner comments, I just wanted to clarify about the timing. So, Isabel, we can finish this item, but we can't start new items without a vote. Is that more or less correct?
Well, it's 10:23, so you have 7 minutes, or you can choose to extend now, make a motion to extend for another, until 10:45. Up to you, but you do have to make a motion if you're going to.
You have to make a motion before 10:30.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we're not going to be able to wrap up this item in 7, so fairly. So does someone want to make a motion to continue another 15 minutes? And after that,
I'll move that we extend another 15 minutes, although I'm hopeful we can finish in the 7 we have.
Okay, so noted. Someone want to second it?
Okay.
Okay. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yeah.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Chair Beal?
Yes. Okay, so you may continue, Commissioner Chang Frank. Motion. We're on till 10:45.
Yeah, I walked the neighborhood to look at these trees, and I personally couldn't find the notice for the trees, not because there wasn't one, but I couldn't even tell, because I looked at the address. I was there. I saw 2 big campers. I thought, oh, maybe there was no notice at all. So to me, I actually had the experience where I knew the address because I saw it and I just couldn't figure out. I just thought that there was some mistake actually. So I personally think that if I had that experience, I can't imagine that some member of the public might have had that experience too. I think this would have been not a problem if there was actual pictures in the agenda, because then I could match the pictures in the agenda to the street. But I actually, given all the kind of concerns that people have brought about the public notice, I would have a concern about voting on this particular tree because of the lack of public notice that I experienced. So
other commissioners?
I mean, I can say that I also was confused. It took me a minute, but I was able to find it. The notice does, just a bit. It's not the 2 that you think it is. It's the one way at the back of the property. You actually think it's at the next house. Is what this tree is. It's right on the property line, or near the property line. So I understand. And what's more, with this tree, it's so large and has these large branches that to get the notice visible, it's only on one of the main limbs. The notice, it's not on all 3 limbs. So this one was hard to notice, I think. Hard to notice and hard to notice.
Any other commissioners? I guess so. My comment is again that it's much the same thing. That so we have a legal responsibility. The homeowner also has a legal responsibility to have safe sidewalks. This is clearly not a safe sidewalk. It needs to be addressed. I think the way we're addressing the sidewalks is probably we're trying to do it efficiently, and that probably means one street at a time, and that probably means that people like the speakers mentioned, they're suddenly notice, hey, what's going on? All these trees are coming down in my neighborhood. So, I think what we'll do is we'll suggest we make that future agenda item. Maybe we'll have a subcommittee to study this. But again, the legal requirement for notice has been met. And we can't just arbitrarily say, well, we didn't see it. That needs to be fixed, but that's not a reason not to vote on this. That's my opinion. But the other commissioners, I'm looking at this as clearly, this is bad news bears. Somebody's going to trip. This needs to come out. We've heard the testimony from the tree expert that I believe there's no way to fix the sidewalk without taking out the tree. So, Commissioner Armendariz.
Sorry, this is more of a question. I know the question was asked about the sidewalk being pushed out into the street, and I've seen you guys do a lot of really creative sidewalk design around these campers, and I'm just wondering if it's explored with the homeowner for pushing sidewalk into their property more. Is that something that is an option to talk to about the owner, and like how does, I don't know, it makes me sad. These trees are really beautiful, but I know that root issues are pretty major.
Sure, I can handle this one. So a lot of times the sidewalk, there's a property line just on the back of walk or a few feet behind the back of walk, and that's what we would run into this case. We just run out of public right of way to place the sidewalk in. So that wouldn't be, and we actually looked at a number of options to try to keep this tree. This is one that, unlike a liquid amber, this is a really nice tree. Unfortunately, that won't work at this location.
And just to clarify, Matt, in this location, the public right-of-way does extend 2 feet inside the sidewalk?
Roughly this fence line.
The fence, which we can't even see the fence. So
yeah, let's see if.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that looks like 2 feet. Yeah. Okay. So to push the sidewalk, you would have to remove the fence, and yeah, I see where we're going. Okay. Does anyone else have their hand up?
Well,
Commissioner Chang Frank. Yep. or
No, go ahead.
Martin, or who's what happened?
I was just going to say, I had understood Commissioner Amenides' question a little differently about, is there some sort of program or something you can work with the property owner to actually use some of their space? They could some sort of arrangement so that you could actually push into some might be willing to do that to save their tree. I don't know, but is there any way to do?
It sounds like John has said, though, in this case, this is hopeless. Even if you didn't have everything else around, there's so much.
I would still like an answer to my question for just other purposes. Thank you.
So we haven't explored that. That's a much more complicated approach, and probably wouldn't be done in the context of the sidewalk repair program, because we would have to they would have to grant an easement or something that becomes a much more complicated sort of project. It's a different project than what's contemplated within the sidewalk repair program.
I understand. I was just kind of a general question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to agree with Commissioner Beal that I think the noticing should be brought up with a future agenda item, but that it sounds like the proper noticing, as the guidelines specify, has been done, and regardless of how many members of the public came to the meeting, and we have heard from members of the public explaining the need for these types of trees in their neighborhood. It seems to me that the evidence is pretty clear that this tree doesn't fit there. It's damaging everything on all sides, and that it unfortunately, it seems to me that it unfortunately does need to come out. And so that's I'm in favor of approving this. Thanks.
Commissioner Chang Frank.
I just want to sort of explore this idea of the property line, because I know when we looked at this issue a long time ago, there was, actually an extensive amount of property line that even beyond the sidewalk that's the city owned. So one question I have is to Mark is was that looked at, like the actual map? Because I know that there's some sometimes 5 feet or 10 feet that's city property.
Yes, we did look at that, and that's one thing. And there's some streets have wider ones than other ones, and I think this is one of the more narrow ones.
Okay. The other thing I want to say is that this, it didn't sound like from what John was saying that this was a hazard in terms of limb failure. It looked like, to me, it looked like a very healthy tree just from the pictures. I didn't really observe it. I didn't observe it because I couldn't see the notice. I think because personally, I think, we've heard from the public about the problems they see with these big trees coming down, the fact that I couldn't find it myself, the fact that it's not a hazard to the public. It may be, yes, sidewalk repair issue, but I do think that this is something that we should postpone this particular tree. We should postpone to another meeting, just so that the public has more time. And so I would move. So I'm making a motion. I would move.
Hang on. No motions. Okay. We're not finished with comments yet. So not a motion yet.
I didn't know you had to be finished with comments, but
okay. We have to do the comment. We want to make sure everyone's finished commenting before we have motions. Does that make sense?
No.
If there's no more comments, did you have a comment, Abbott?
Yeah. I just maybe I can. I'm asking for clarification. My understanding was that what was so special about this tree was the relationship between the tree and the root ball and the angle that would be there and the cutout for the curb. And that all of those things together make it virtually impossible to save this tree and have a slope that meets standards. Am I understanding that correctly? Just because you've got the cutout and then the tree, and that you'd have to shave the tree so much to make that compliant that you're going to kill the tree anyways. Am I understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other commissioners that have comments? Commissioner Chang Frank again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we did push this out a month, would that actually change anything about the pacing of the actual repair of the sidewalk? Is it ready to go? As you got the contractor, lined up? Just a question.
And let me just clarify, that's pushing out this meeting to another month. It's pushing out the removal
that's right.
further.
Yep.
No.
I'm going to speak for James here a little bit. So if I get offline, he'll correct me. My sense is we would go forward with the project. And if for whatever reason this was rejected, we would pull it from that project. So we would just delete it from the scope.
No, I also mean that we're not stalling any project sort of launch.
No, that's what I was saying. The next step on this is we'll go advertise for a contractor, and we would include, and I guess if we don't make a decision on this tonight, we would still proceed with that within the package. Okay. And if it became, a bidding process will take a minimum of a month, but likely by the time it gets to council, it's 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. So we would include it in the package, go out to bid, and if the commission decided not to approve it, we would simply pull it from the final contract.
No, I understand. So they won't cause a delay.
No.
Either way. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll give my comment is that I just want to address this because we had 3 members of the public that spoke that they didn't want this removed. And we had 78% of the voters in Albany approved for a sidewalk tax to repair our sidewalks. This sidewalk needs to be repaired. So I'll leave it to the commissioners to decide what to do. And if there's no more comments, then I'll let the motion go. Is that a hand for a motion or a comment?
That's a hand for a comment. I just want to make the clarification that when the sidewalk measure was passed, it was not clear to every homeowner that big trees would be taken down. And the reason I say that is because I actually was one of those people who helped campaign for the sidewalk repair measure. So it shouldn't be assumed that everybody knows that this was going to be the result of the sidewalk repair measure. So I don't think we can make that claim. The public has spoken on this issue.
Commissioner Martin.
Particularly given the fact that the city has been able to do so many repairs around trees without pulling them out, and the facts that we see here for this tree, I move that we approve the application.
Okay, we could do that if there's no more comments. Did anyone?
I thought you were asking for motions.
Well, we're in trouble now. We had one. Well, okay, we'll go with yours.
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, so we have to go with Brian's. So your motion is to approve?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, excuse me.
Second.
Sorry, I asked.
Hey, you can't. We have to have a second.
But okay, that's okay. But I just want to say, as a matter of process, I asked to make a motion.
But you asked before I had asked for motion.
Yeah, so I think that's a little tricky there because
it's.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So Brian kind of cut in. I don't know what to do. What do you think, Isabel? Should we ask for guidance?
I think you can go forward with this motion and see if it passes. And if it doesn't pass, you can move forward with another motion.
And it shouldn't matter because if in fact the will of the team were to postpone, then they would vote no to Brian's. It should come out either way, the same. So do we have a second? And if we don't have a second, that would be a good way to know, okay, I don't see a second. So I think, this motion does not carry, and then I'm going to go with, we'll entertain another motion. Wait, Brian's got his hand up. You're muted. Wait, what's going on? I was afraid I lost my sound.
Oh, okay. I put up my hand because I didn't see Commissioner Chang Frank putting up her hand, but now that she's put up her hand, I will yield my hand to her hand.
That's the sort of stuff we need. Commissioner, without further ado, Commissioner Chang Frank.
Okay, so I make a motion to delay this decision on this, or the vote on this particular tree until next month, June, and also in the meantime have notices on all sides of the trees, just so that it's really crystal clear there's no question that about the public noticing of that on the actual tree.
Okay, I think we're in trouble here. So you can make a motion to postpone it to the next meeting. I don't think you can throw anything else. Am I right or wrong, Isabel? We need a simple motion to either carry it or.
I think the motion can include other things. Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, except it's going to be harder for it to get approved. We got 5 minutes. So do we have a second?
I think it's really important that the people feel that they've been heard. So I happily second this motion.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
No.
Chair Beal?
Yes. And the motion carries. I guess, can we still talk about anything else, or do we have to cut it? Can we talk about future agenda items?
I have one more informational only.
On the tree stuff?
Yes. The one
so John, we've got 4 minutes left. We have to close the meeting. So, okay.
Okay, technically this isn't a tree less than 3 dBH, but I'm just bringing this up for information. A Chinese pistache was removed for a Comcast emergency power backup. They're going to remove it and replace the tree on the same property. This was the tree. I believe it's already removed. So this is just informational. I'm done.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the expedited delivery. Do we want to talk about future agenda items? We've got 3 minutes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to see an agenda item regarding noticing of tree removal and ways to improve that. And I would also like to see an overview of Caltrans properties within Albany and the process for applying for city projects there. Ideally, even if the city can secure a Caltrans employee to present that to us, but otherwise, city staff. Thank you.
And Commissioner Chang Frank.
It was the same agenda item I actually asked for last time. I just wanted I guess, I don't know if it would be a voting kind of, just a question of a report out of the different activities that the Parks and Recreation Commission is now having in person, if we can expect music in the park, et cetera, now that, the pandemic is kind of loosening up, so.
It sounds like a report on Parks and Rec, what's happening in person, what's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those sound like good ideas, and I'll work with Isabel to try to get them on the agenda. And with that, I want to thank you all for your participation, especially for the members of the public. It's good to know that people are getting involved in the community, and I certainly learned a lot tonight from people's input about their experiences with the quality of the neighborhood. So yeah, on that note, we'll adjourn. See you next month.